have to help me through some of this tonight. Everybody, please rise. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in this decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessings on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. We'll now do the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Noon.
Here.
Mayor Samaras.
Here.
Counsel Cirillo. Counsel Conway.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
Counsel Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
8 present.
All right, we have a rather full agenda tonight, and
Mr. Mayor, we have a moment of silence.
yes, I just want to say we have a full agenda tonight. Counsel Cirillo cannot be present tonight. She has some medical issues she has to deal with, and she just wanted to state it. That's the reason why she couldn't be here tonight. We have a moment of silence. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for Arthur William Ramallo, Sr., a longtime Lowell resident and patriarch of the Lowell boxing community. He was the devoted husband of Rita Peralta Ramallo, with whom he would have celebrated their 65th anniversary in November. Arthur was raised and educated in Lowell at St. Peter's Parochial School and was a graduate of Keith Academy. He learned to box at a young age, and his first job was at Doc's Lunch in Lowell. Shortly after that, he worked as a cook with the Middlesex County Training School. This is where he began to train children in boxing. He found his calling, and soon after he opened the iconic Ramallo's West End Gym in Lowell, which he owned and operated for the past 52 years, known as the Home of Champions. Arthur trained countless thousands of young boxers from all walks of life that came through his doors. Throughout his career, Arthur was synonymous with boxing in Lowell. He was involved with the Greater Lowell Central New England Golden Gloves since 1968 and served as the director of contestants. Mr. Ramallo was also instrumental in the conception, development, and construction of the current Lowell Senior Center, serving as its director for many years. His tireless dedication to the gym and the senior center will be remembered as his legacy. Whether you were a kid off the street or a senior citizen with nowhere else to go, he was there to help. Besides his beloved wife, Rita, he is also survived by his children, Arthur Ramallo Jr., David Ramallo Sr., Susan Keefe, Catherine Trask, and Joseph Ramallo Sr., 18 grandchildren and 29 great-grandchildren, and 4 great-great-grandchildren. He was predeceased by his daughter, the late Patricia Baez. We offer our condolences to his family, relatives, and many friends, and he truly will be missed. I also like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for all those who have died since our last City Council meeting. May they rest in peace. And at this time, I'd like to recognize our City Clerk to do a moment of silence for Judge James Geary, Jr.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor. I'd like to thank the body for giving me the honor of recognizing the Honorable James M. Geary, returned to Lowell today as he was buried at the age of 83 at St. Patrick's Cemetery. Judge Geary was a well-known retired Middlesex and Essex County District Court judge, formerly of Lowell and Chelmsford, Massachusetts. He passed away peacefully on Wednesday, August 21st, at his home in Matunic, Rhode Island, with his loving family by his side. He was appointed as a District Court judge for Middlesex and Essex counties on April 11, 1995, at the Ayer District Court. He retired in 2006 after a highly distinguished career on the bench. Following his retirement, he lived in Matunic with his beloved wife for 54 years, Marie Robinson Geary. Born in Lowell on April 11, 1936, the son of the late James M. Geary and the late Catherine Novak Geary, he was a brother of the late Robert J. Geary. He was a member of St. Patrick Parish. Judge Geary graduated from Lowell High School in 1953. He proudly served his country in the U.S. Navy from 1953 until 1957 as a communications specialist. Judge Geary graduated from Providence College in 1961 and Boston University Law School in 1964. Judge Geary's career in the law encompassed many different facets of the profession. He served as an FBI special agent in Atlanta and New York City offices from 1964 until 1967. In 1968, he opened a private practice in Chelmsford. He worked as an assistant Middlesex district attorney, as well as town council for the town of Tingsboro, as well as council for the Chelmsford Housing Authority and council for several Greater Lowell housing authorities. He served his community until his appointment to the bench in 1995. Active in many civic and charitable organizations, Judge Geary was a former trustee of the Duval Manor and the Middlesex Community College Foundation. He was a former member of the Vesper Country Club. In addition to his wife, Marie, Judge Geary is survived by his 4 beloved children, Gretchen Geary Suarez and her husband, Miguel Suarez of Dorchester, Mass., Rachel M. Geary and her husband, Lee Feekins of Kiev, Ukraine, Catherine M. Geary and her partner, David Locksmith of Petersham, Massachusetts, and James M. Geary III and his wife, Christine Riley of Matunic, Rhode Island, and 3 grandchildren, Bo Daniel Feekins, Sebastian Geary Suarez, and Georgia Faye Feekins. He's also survived by his sister-in-law, Margaret Gray Geary of Chelmsford, as well as many loving extended family members. Judge Geary's life took him all over the world, but his heart remained in Lowell. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of words to Council Mercia, dedication to Arthur Romalo. It was over 25 years that I met our friend Arthur Romalo and his wife. We're dedicated, hardworking, sincere people. To me, Arthur was a quiet man of few words, a man always behind the scenes, always helping those in need, and you never knew it. All the time I known Arthur, I'd never seen him ask for anything for himself, only for others. And while, as Council Mercy mentioned, he will be best remembered for his help in guiding youth both in and out of the boxing ring, many more remember Arthur for his generous heart and his dedication to the seniors of this city. The Smith Baker across the street was the home of the former senior center, but Arthur and his wife made the best of it, utilizing the old structure to feed hundreds, provide medical care, entertainment, you name it. But they both pursued the dream of a new center for the senior center because they knew the seniors deserved more, and they were relentless. They went to work, and so did we. Council Mercy and myself created a task force for a new center, created the Friends of the Council on Aging that raised thousands of private donations to support the center. Never wanted to have his hand out. Arthur and his wife knew it would be a collaborative effort, and they walked the walk. We thank you, Arthur, for your decades of work on behalf of the seniors and the generations of youth who have a better life thanks to you and your dear wife, Rita. We'll miss you, Arthur. You have left a legacy in Lowell that will be remembered by all on all those lives you touched.
Well, thank you. Any other moments of silence? Please darken the chambers. Thank you. Usually, sometimes we don't always have some good news, but I was talking with the chief this afternoon, and he made me aware that last night, 2 police officers who were off duty were walking down Market Street, and there was an argument going on. They saw someone pull a gun. They gave chase to that person. That person tried to get away by jumping into the canal. But the thing is, they called for backup, and they captured this person. But I've asked the chief of police to come before this council in the next meeting with the police officers so they can receive a good job from the city council. But I think that's important to know. 2 men off duty, and they made sure that the city was protected. So next, we have appointment of a city auditor. So the first is waive the full reading. I need a motion to adopt to appoint the new city auditor by Mr. Conway, second by Councilor Mercia. So we'll have a roll call, and you will call off individual. Now, we had 3 candidates. Candidate Karamis Wigan withdrew her application. There are 2 remaining candidates, Charles Anaganis and Cheryl Dick. And you will, when your name is called, give the name of the person you're choosing. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Mercia.
Charles Anganis.
Counsel Milonazo.
Charles Anganis.
Counsel Noon.
Charles Anganis.
Mayor Samaras.
Charles Anganis.
Counsel Cirillo. Counsel Conway.
Cheryl Dick.
Counsel Elliott.
Cheryl Dick.
Counsel Kennedy.
Charles Anganis.
Counsel Leahy.
Charles Anganis.
Charles Anganis. Charles Anganis.
Charles Anganis, 6-2.
6-2. That's correct.
Thank you. The next will be his salary. Ms. Calorie. Could you speak into the mic, please?
Thank you. Ordinance salary grid. The prior city auditor was on step 2, and his current salary was a little over 110.
Is there any motion? Yes,
I'd
Councilor.
like to make a motion that the mayor meet with the candidate and discuss the salary. That's typical protocol, that there is a discussion, and then that recommendation is brought before full city council.
Do you have a second for that?
Seconded.
Roll call, just in case.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Cirillo. Counsel Conway.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Thank you.
8 yeas.
Okay. Next, we have a thank you from Habitat for Humanity on reaching their housing production goal that they established with the Lowell City Council.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Hey, thanks, everybody, for showing up. I'm Brenda Gould. I'm the Executive Director for Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell. I do not have a presentation. I just have a huge, huge thank you. We just closed on our 10th home, of which we committed to the City of Lowell back in 2011 to build 10% of, at that time, what the city was doing for affordable housing, 100 new units, and we put in 10. So because of your generosity and several other people in this room, I will start with the DPD, Craig and Claire and Joe, Diane, and the building department and public works, the planning department, and all of you. 10 families and 32 children now have a home in the city of Lowell, a very nice home, 3 bedrooms and 4 bedroom homes. And we also built a park, again, because of your generosity. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you. Families are closed today, and we would love to build more. So if you can think of more land, keep us in mind. And you're all invited to the dedication on September 12th. I will send out invites to the City Council. So thank you. We couldn't have done it without you, without your generosity, without your support, and so many other people in the City of Lowell. We love building here. We want to build more. So thank you. Have a good meeting, and I hope to be back again. Thank you.
All right, we have Congresswoman Trahan here. There's a motion made by myself and Councilor Noon requiring the requesting the city manager have the signature bridge named after our former Congresswoman, Nikki Songas. Do you have a second on this motion?
You don't need a
Councilor
second.
Elliott?
You don't need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't. We're there. But if I need a motion to take it out of order. By Councilor Milonazo, second by Councilor Noon. Councilor Noon, do you want to introduce this issue?
Mr. Mayor, I would like the Honorable Congresswoman Trahan to speak first and the Speaker. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
Haven't
you.
seen you since this morning.
It's nice to start and to end my day with you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Madam Manager, before I was elected to Congress in 2018 as a mom of 2 little girls, I was incredibly proud to be represented by an outstanding leader, Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas. We know the phrase that representation matters, and frankly, it always did to my family and to me. Seeing a strong woman hold this seat and advocate fiercely for the families in our community set an incredible example for my girls and for young women across this community. Serving in the House is the greatest privilege of my life, and helping to build on the fantastic work of Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas is an honor. Congresswoman Tsongas was known on Capitol Hill for being an effective leader, someone who wasn't afraid to roll up her sleeves and use the power that comes with this position to make our community a better place. She was known for her commitment to fighting for the vulnerable, providing for our hardworking families, and lifting our communities by keeping the focus on who she served. She had an intimate relationship with this district and truly knew the people, their needs, and how to work cooperatively to get things accomplished. Congresswoman Tsongas secured $13 million in grants to repair and take ownership of the many canal bridges in our city, with $2 million in federal funding for Signature Bridge. When there was a need to transfer ownership of federal land to the city, she made that happen too. That is why it is so fitting to rename the Signature Bridge for Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas, to honor her work and her service to this community, especially her commitment to the Hamilton Canal Innovation District. This project would not have been possible without Representative Tsongas' advocacy and the partnership of many in this community, in this room, on the local, state, and federal levels. It is my honor to be here tonight to speak in support of City Councilor Noon's motion to rename the Signature Bridge in the Hamilton Canal Innovation District for my predecessor, a champion of our city, Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another registered speaker.
Yeah, Fred Faust.
Well, this is the hardest assignment I've ever had, to follow up on Nikki Tsongas and Lori Trahan. But I'll try. Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Madam Manager, sorry, and the Council, thank you for listening to me today. The Signature Bridge, this is an article on September 22nd from the Lowell Sun. The Signature Bridge in the Hamilton Canal Innovation District, a bridge that city officials say will pull everything together and encourage more development, is about to get installed. That's a well-written little sentence. Pulling everything together, encouraging more development, pulling, pushing, and thus securing dollars, as the Congresswoman has described. That's what Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas was able to do for Lowell and this important project. I met Nikki Tsongas in 1972. That's a very long time ago for everyone in this room, perhaps with the exception of me and Mayor Samaras. In my experience, she's always represented decency, thoughtfulness, and compassion for people. Recently, I've had the privilege of getting to know a lot about a lot of bridges in Lowell. It's been a very satisfying experience. It's been a very illuminating experience. The anonymous and very generous donor who has worked on the bridge projects has explained to us that the motivation on her part was to connect the neighborhoods and the downtown. In commenting in support of this motion, it occurs to me that the naming of the bridge for Nikki Tsongas is recognizing Nikki's connection to public service, the pulling together of partners, encouraging economic development, all intended to lift all boats. That's something that Nikki Tsongas has done throughout her career. So wouldn't the name Nicola Savage Tsongas be a fitting signature on a signature bridge for the city of Lowell? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks to the Honorable Congresswoman Trahan and Fred Faust for speaking in support. Congresswoman Tsongas, former, has been a champion for the Hampton Canal District and for the city of Lowell, as well as the entire 3rd District of Massachusetts during her tenure as the member of Congress. You look at the 5-page that I tried to compile It's ranging from the work she's done on transportation, local community health, public safety, education, million and million of dollars during her 11 years in Congress that she brought the city of Lowell and the 3rd Congressional District. Naming this bridge after her, the signature bridge after her, is fitting. It's the right things to do. So I urge my colleague to support the motion. Thank you.
And I co-authored this motion with you, and I would simply say, as a congresswoman, as a congressperson, she simply did what she had to do. She simply did her job, and she did it well. So that's the reason I do support the naming of the signature bridge. It's not for just doing your job, but it's for making sure that her constituents in the city of Lowell, or the greater Lowell area, receive more than their fair share of funding from the federal government. Any other comments from any members? Like, take a roll call?
May I?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, you all set, okay. Roll call, please.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Newman.
Yes.
Mayor Samac.
Yes.
Council Cirillo. Council Collins.
Yes.
Council Relic.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Lee.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thank you. And thank you to the representative, the Congresswoman, I should say. All right. We are going to shortly go into the general public hearings. Okay. We're just about ready for that. First, I would like to have the acceptance of the minutes of the special city council meeting of August 12th, the public safety subcommittee of August 13th, the city council meeting of August 13th, the special city council meeting of August 15th, and the park and recreation subcommittee of August 19th. I need a motion to accept and place on file.
So moved.
By Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Mercia. A couple of minutes away from this clock is 7 o'clock. Okay, we're set. First, a general public hearing. A vote to accept provisions of Mass General Laws 44B 3-7, known as Community Preservation Act. I want to open up the hearing for those who want to speak in favor. Anyone who wants to speak in favor?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ty Choma from 79 Fairlawn Street. My apologies, I'm not feeling so well, but this is very important to me. I'm in favor of it because based on 3 things, when you talk about park and open space, right, the playgrounds that our kids and loved ones play and use every single day, this thing will help it. This thing will help uplift it, right? When you're talking about the swing, the slide is being, defective, this act will help make it better. When you talk about historical buildings, this act right here would uplift it too. It's falling apart, right? But this thing will help bring it back to life. And when you talk about affordable housing, right, you talk about ending homelessness. I'm not saying this is going to eliminate homelessness. I'm saying this is going to support it in preventing homelessness and support in a way that's really impactful to each and every one of us. So I'm standing here tonight and asking each and every one in regard to supporting the motion because it's close to home. So thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Eric Schlegel, Director of Development Services. As the members of the subcommittee who reviewed the CPA know, we had several good meetings about the Community Preservation Act where we discussed the specifics and I believe came up with an appropriate course of action going forward, which was to put it on the ballot. I would speak in favor of it. I think that from a purely financial aspect, it gives us access to the pool of funds at the state level that we wouldn't have access to because we're not a member. It will allow us to potentially use these funds to do capital improvements that would take some of the burden off of the capital plan and off of the tax levy. And as has been mentioned by the folks during the proposal of the motions to put the CPA on the ballot, it will allow us to do things like increase affordable housing and turn those dollars into a greater benefit because of the matching funds from the state. So for those reasons, I would support the approval of this motion.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak in favor? In favor? Favor? That portion is closed. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? Opposition? In opposition? That portion is closed. I need a motion to adopt and place this on referendum
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Milonazo. Thank you. Next. I'm sorry, we need a roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Cirillo. Counsel Conway.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
now, this allows this CPA to go on the ballot in November.
Right.
If the public, and this is a binding referendum question, so if the public does not support this overwhelmingly, or the way it votes out, does that mean it's a dead issue? We don't,
I believe so.
okay.
Clerk?
I believe, yeah, if it doesn't pass on a referendum, it won't be out of the ordinances.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, next, we have National Grid requesting installation of approximately 1,500 feet of conduit under the roadway of East Meadow Lane. Want to open the meeting. Those in favor want to speak in favor? Anyone want to speak in favor?
My name is Doug Highland. I'm speaking for National Grid. What we have is a URD program, which we track any faults in this particular system, and anytime there's a fault, they track it, and if it's on the worst performing URD, then it gets brought to a design in order to replace any of the cable. Right now, there's direct buried cable going through East Meadow Lane. What we are proposing to do is to replace in conduit to the 4 transformers on East Meadow Lane that would come off a riser pole on 8th Ave and run to another pole on East Meadow Road.
Anyone else want to speak in favor? Anyone else speaking in favor? This portion is closed. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? That portion is closed. I need a motion to refer to the wire inspector for a report and recommendation by Councilor Conway, second by Councilor Elliott. Thank you. Next, we have National Grid request to install an SO pole on Old Ferry Road. I want to open up the hearing for anyone who wants to speak in favor. In favor?
Good evening, Council. My name is Paul Pellegrini, and I'm an engineer for the Merrimack Valley. And this pole is required for the new market basket installation. And it's going to supply power to the new store via a riser pole that will bring wire underground into the underground transformer that will be adjacent to the store. So it's a necessary installation.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak in favor? In favor? Favor? That portion is closed. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? Opposition? That portion is closed. I need a motion to refer to the wire inspector for a report and recommendation.
So moved.
Kennedy, second by Councilor Mercia. Thank you. Next, we have National Grid and Verizon New England to install 1 new pole on Nesmith Street and relocating 14 poles along Nesmith Street, Andover Street, East Merrimack Street, and Rogers Street for road widening. So I want to open up this hearing for those who want to speak in favor. Hearing is now open for those who want to speak in favor.
Yes, this is some installation of a new pole and relocation of some old poles on Nesmith Street Andover Street, East Merrimack Street, and Rogers Street for a mass DOT road widening project.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wants to speak in favor? In favor? That portion is closed. Anyone want to speak in opposition? Opposition? That portion is closed. I need a motion to refer to the wire inspector for a report and recommendation by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Milonazo. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to suspend the rules and move a couple of items to the
Okay.
top of the agenda, if we could.
A second?
7.11, vote to determine the two electoral systems for non-binding referendum question.
Second.
And the other one, I understand there's quite a few people registered to speak. Councilor Mercia's motion, 11.3.
Okay,
Second.
okay, fine. So the first is the presentation of on a potential election system. Madam Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council and the audience at home. Tonight on the agenda, first, it's two-part. One is a presentation on the options, the systems that are subject matter to the consent decree that was entered in the case brought against the city over 2 years ago. That case was settled by consent decree entered by the court in June. And since that time, the city has put together a presentation which was given last week at the Senior Center, as well as tonight a presentation on each of the four options. And the law department can present that and answer any questions. Thereafter, there's also a related matter on the agenda, and that is for the council, pursuant to the terms of the consent decree, to elect two of the four systems, the system options that are listed forth in the consent decree. So if there's no objection, I would turn this over to the law department for them to present. And again, is an explanation. There's no opinion or weighing in favor or against by the presentation, but simply an explanation of what each option entails.
So tonight, we will have a slideshow that will walk the council and the public through the four systems that would be deliberated on tonight by the council. After the presentation, slideshow presentation, there'll be time for any questions, and it's also my understanding that there are speakers that have registered on this, and we will hear from them as well. Following that, we will just go over the method of voting for tonight.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Brown. I'm the First Assistant City Solicitor with the Law Department, and I'm just going to be running through the slideshow. We're going to keep it pretty brief. The important thing here is there's an important vote tonight, and so we want to make sure it's absolutely clear what the options are and what they entail. So the four systems available are 1, district-based representation, 2, hybrid representation, a mixture of districts and at-large, and within that system, there are 3 sub-options, which we'll go over. Third, at-large system, which is ranked choice voting. And then finally, a 3-district representation system with ranked choice voting. So for each choice, I'm going to briefly recap what it is, outline some commonly noted features of each system. So an advantage, that somebody may see something as an advantage of one system, that very same feature may be perceived as a disadvantage to another person, depending on your perspective. I'm just going to say a few words about each system. And again, the city and the law department want to make it clear that we are not endorsing any of these options or arguments for them. So the first option, district-based representation. Under this option, the city would be divided into 9 districts. Each district would elect 1 councillor. City council remains 9 members. At least 2 of the districts would be majority-minority districts. And here, because of the way this lawsuit was brought, that means that in 2 of the districts, a majority of the voting population, based on census records, would be either Asian American or Hispanic Latino. Under this option, the school committee would be elected as follows. The 9 districts would be divided or grouped into groups of 3. So 3 districts in each group. Each group would then elect 2 school committee members, and the mayor would serve as the 7th member on the school committee. And for the school committee, at least one of the combined districts would be majority-minority. And when I use majority-minority in this presentation, it's always going to mean the same thing. So some commonly noted features of this type of system. Representation would be based on geographic area. And some people like that because they like to think that there's somebody sort of literally in their corner for them. Districts may offer more opportunities for people to run for office because barriers to entry may be perceived to be lower, meaning both it may cost less to run a campaign to get elected in a district than to run a citywide campaign. It may also be less intimidating for somebody to think that they can go out and represent a district than to mount a campaign at large. Districts may also result in more political engagement for the electorate at large because people may feel more engaged with their district rep. And districts are seen as a simple voting system, so every voter in this case would vote for 1 councillor and 2 school committee members. So that's the first system that's available. The second is hybrid. And under a hybrid system, some candidates would be elected at large, so as presently, and some would be elected by district. And under the hybrid system, there are 3 subcategories. So there's a hybrid 8-1 system, where there would be 8 district seats and 1 at-large seat. City Council remains at 9 members. Option 2, an 8-3 system, with 8 district seats and 3 at-large seats. The council would be expanded to 11, 8 plus 3. And finally, a 7-2 system with 7 district seats and 2 at-large systems. And under any of those options within the hybrid category, at least 2 of the districts would be required to be majority-minority, again, meaning that a majority of the voting population, based on census data, would be Asian American or Latino. The school committee under these options, for either the 8-1 option or the 8-3 option, the 8 districts would be combined into 4 groups, so 4 groups of 2 districts each. And 1 school committee member would be elected from each of those, and then there would be 2 at-large members, and the mayor would also be on the school committee. Under the hybrid 7-2 option, each district would simply elect 1 member of the school committee. There would be no at-large school committee members under that option, and the mayor would not be on the school committee. So some commonly noted features of hybrids, and I'm not distinguishing here between 8-1, 8-3, 7-2, it's just hybrid in general. This system is seen to have a balance or mix of some of the advantages and disadvantages of each of district and at-large representation. So, as with districts, barriers to entry for running for office may be lower than for an at-large seat. However, people do have the option to run at-large as well, so depending on where you feel your strengths are, you might choose to run for a district or you might choose to run at-large. The electorate, public, would have a district representative. However, they also would have an alternative person who is or 1 or 3 people, depending on the system, who is answerable to them if they feel that their views are different from their district rep. That could be attractive. And for much the same reasons as I articulated with the district system, it's viewed as a simple voting option. Third system would be at-large, an at-large system, and the system would be run through ranked choice voting. So all candidates under this system, whether on the council or the school committee, would run at-large citywide. And I should just say the size of the city council and the size of the school committee would remain as now. And voters could vote for as many candidates as they would like to. However, unlike the present system, voters would rank their choices under this system. So they would say which is their first choice, which is their second choice, for as many choices as they feel they have interest or information about the candidates. And the voting would be tallied or counting so that it's roughly proportional to voting preferences across the city. So some commonly noted features of this system. At-large representation, as now, means that all councillors are answerable to all voters. People running for office under this system could choose whether to run on geography, on an issue, or on some other basis. And by that, I mean that the threshold to get elected under this system would be lower than under the present system. And so somebody might choose to mount a campaign based on geography and still stand a chance of election. Somebody might choose to run on an issue, say the environment, animal welfare, whatever it is. And also a minority candidate of any description who is not one of the minorities who brought the lawsuit could run a campaign that appeals to what that person perceives to be their particular interests. And at-large elections are said to generate, as a general principle, generate more competition than district elections. Ranking candidates is straightforward and fair. So even if somebody's number one choice isn't picked, their number two may be, etc. So the last system that you'll be voting on is a 3-district representation system. And under this one, 3 districts would be created within the city. And for the city council, voters in each district would elect 3 candidates through ranked choice voting. So each district, 3 candidates. And for the school committee, each district, 2 candidates, again through ranked choice voting, and the mayor would serve on the school committee. So commonly noted features of this, and I have a little star by that just because actually I don't know of anywhere else that has this, so commonly noted maybe not quite right. However, the system is perceived to have some of the advantages and disadvantages of district and, some of the advantages of each system while attempting to minimize the disadvantages of each system. So, for example, some of the advantages of district representation may be maintained, but the districts would obviously be larger than on the 9-district system or the 8-district system. And some people may believe that 7, 8, or 9 districts is too many for this city, in which case they may find this more attractive. On the other hand, some of the advantages of at-large representation may be maintained, while at the same time offering geographic areas some form of representation. So it attempts to be a balance between the competing interests of, say, lower barriers to entry and also competition for election. And as with the previous option, you would rank candidates 1, 2, 3, 4, which is viewed to be straightforward and fair, and that even if somebody's number 1 choice isn't picked, the chance of a number 2 choice being picked is there, etc. So that's it, really. That's our slides, and
We have some speakers, but you want to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just before we go further with this, I think there might be people in the audience, and probably there's people on TV that are hearing this all for the first time. So I think it would probably be helpful for everybody if you were able to explain how we got to this place, and why we're doing this, why we have to do this, and also the definition or an explanation of what a minority-majority district is. And then finally, in terms of ranked choice voting, will that be the same as the way Cambridge conducts their elections, which is sometimes referred to as proportional representation? I think it would be helpful to everybody if we could get an answer on those before we move forward with the speakers, if there's no objection.
Madam Solicitor?
So in answer to the first question, how did we get here and why are we doing this? This was a lawsuit that was brought forth. Two groups comprised a group of plaintiffs, and they were members of the Southeast Asian community and Hispanic community. We went through extensive discovery, and most importantly, had engaged the assistance of an expert, which is really critical in a case like this. What also is, I think, important to understand in these cases is that when you have the at-large system that Lowell had employed for many years, for decades, that the expert is looking at our voting data and the trends. And it's the analysis that is done by an expert for communities that face these types of challenges that really turns as to whether there is a troubling trend with respect to the way votes are taken or not. And what is to be avoided with respect to the vote under the Voting Rights Act, which was the impetus of the lawsuit, is anytime you have distinct groups, minority groups, who are sufficient in size that they can and should have a substantive say in an election, that vote gets effectively washed out by or nullified by the majority of voters. In this case, in Lowell, that would be the the Caucasian vote. And so when our voting data was looked at by the expert that we hired, and just a couple of quick words about our expert, there are really just a handful of people in the country that are verified experts in this area. The individual that we had hired, a retired professor at the University of North Carolina, is one of those experts. He had been utilized by the Justice Department, by the federal courts, by a lot of other communities, and in fact was an expert in the seminal case in voting rights challenges. So he had looked at the data of the city, had advised the city and the council, and had executive sessions with the council, and had advised the council that there was in fact a problem with respect to our voting trends, that they were consistent with what would constitute a violation under the Voting Rights Act. And from that point on, the city started negotiating with the plaintiffs over, I believe, a dozen sessions in U.S. District Court with a retired federal judge, and we came to a settlement. One of the things that was noted when we had our larger public session, that our expert is not aware of a settlement of the kind that Lowell has put forth. And that really, it's important for residents to understand that what makes this settlement rather unique is that the council made sure that there was a method for the public to be able to substantively weigh in on what type of change would ultimately take place to the way the city votes. And as a result, tonight, the council will limit these 4 systems down to 2, and voters will participate in a non-binding referendum as to which of those 2 systems voters feel would best serve the overall needs and interests of the city. It should also be just noted that the reason it's a non-binding referendum is that's what we have to do for this type of a case. We cannot put a binding referendum on. So once voters go and vote, and that vote comes back to the council will then ultimately choose what that system is. To answer the other two questions, which are much shorter in length, with respect to the Cambridge model, the at-large ranked choice voting is an option that is before the council. According to the consent decree that was entered into by both parties, the parties have agreed that the ranked choice voting would operate in a way similar to Cambridge. It could be slightly different, and I think, frankly, what we would be looking at is the purchase of new voting machines, and those voting machines would ultimately calculate the results of the ranked choice voting. Lastly, a minority-majority community is simply the minority population in a certain district that is sufficient in size to be larger in number than the overall majority community that compromises the city as a whole.
Thank you.
There are any other questions? Well, we'll have the speakers. Clerk call us.
Hope Anderson.
Hello, Madam Manager, Mr. Mayor, councilors. My name is Hope Anderson. I live at 16 Weatherby Avenue in Lowell. For me, what's important in this decision is not just the issues of representation and inclusion that we've been talking about, but also access to voting and access to running. I think that it's really important that everyone in our city has an opportunity, if they are legally eligible to vote, to be able to participate in our system and to feel that their vote matters. And it's important for candidates to be able to run if that is important to them and they feel that they have something to contribute to the city council or the school committee. And honestly, in our lifetimes, for most people, right, in Lowell, we've had this system, and I think that looking at change, it is daunting. But with all of the options presented, I think that the hybrid representation or some form of district representation, probably the hybrid system, is probably the best going forwards, because not only does it still give the opportunity for people to be represented from different neighborhoods, but also it limits the barriers to running, especially for women, especially for people of color who may not have the resources, the time, the money, the rich neighbors, et cetera, to be able to run citywide campaigns. And I think it would really help represent Lowell when people have the option of running, if they do have the resources to run a citywide campaign, versus if they are running in their district and getting around to their neighbors. Just the sheer amount of money that is spent on campaign advertising, mailers, et cetera, could be limited by having people run district campaigns if that is what they choose. So I don't really have a preference among the hybrid options, but I think that option 2 seems like a good compromise between all of the things that we've been discussing tonight. Thank you.
Joseph Boyle.
Good evening, councilors. Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. I am a supporter of ranked choice voting. I believe that it can improve our electoral system and have been active on this. As a matter of fact, I recently organized a meeting between statewide ranked choice voting activists and Senator Kennedy. So I think I could fairly be described as a local ranked choice voting activist. As a local ranked choice voting activist, I wish to recommend against the adoption of the citywide ranked choice voting option. It does not work the same way that we have been, that we supporters have been talking about in terms of how ranked choice voting operates and can improve our elections. I think it's a wonderful thing, but ranked choice voting is ultimately a tool. We have a certain job to do here, and we should pick the right tool for the job. When we're trying to fix something in our houses, we don't say, I'm going to use a hammer instead of a wrench because I like hammers instead of wrenches. we'd first look and decide, are we trying to turn a bolt or are we trying to drive a nail? The impetus behind this lawsuit and behind this change is to have more diversity on the council, more diversity in racial and ethnic diversity. Also, advantages would be more geographic diversity, also more diversity, intellectual diversity in terms of in terms of what issues and what viewpoints are being represented. I do not believe that the ranked choice, all at-large ranked choice voting option helps to achieve that goal. I think it would actually hinder that goal compared to the other options on the table. This is not a denunciation of ranked choice voting. As a matter of fact, my preference would be the 3-district ranked choice voting option. But that is, in my opinion, only slightly ahead some of the district options. My goal here tonight is not to give a recommendation to you about which one Joe Boyle supports, so you should support it too, but to provide you with information about that would be useful to you in making your decision. And the most important piece of information I have is to talk about the map. I don't know if the council has had the opportunity to look at draft maps of what 9 districts and 8 districts and 7 districts would look like. But I'm a map guy. I have, as an urban planner, I've played with these. And what I have found is that a 7-district map fits Lowell's geography much better than the other ones. At a 7-district map, with a 7-district map, you can have 2 districts north of the river and 5 districts south of the river. You don't have, with other numbers of districts, you end up with awkward districts that jump the river. You end up with some very arbitrary lines being drawn just to try to make the numbers work out, whereas with 7 districts, you can draw a map that accurately captures meaningful geographic locations within Lowell. You can have basically a Pawtucketville and a Centerville district. You might have to fudge a little around Beaver Brook to have it go one way or the other, but those are meaningful places. I represent Pawtucketville, I represent Centerville, as opposed to a district that's a bit of Centerville and jumps across the river and then goes off in this direction. So please, I ask you to consider, as you're making your decisions tonight, to please keep the map in mind. We can have a much neater map that has more meaningful districts with the 7-district option. Thank you.
Judith Duran.
Hello, thank you for hearing me once again. I attended 3 of the informational sessions regarding the election change, 2 that were sponsored by Lowell Votes and the 1 that was sponsored by the city. I also read all of the minutes of the executive sessions when they became available and everything else I could get my hands on. After a lot of consideration and discussions with several people, I concluded that the hybrid option that allows for 8 district and 3 at-large councilors would be best for Lowell. After coming to that conclusion, I was invited by attorney Michael Gallagher to sign on to a letter he wrote to the Lowell Sun, which outlines the benefits of this option, some of which Hope Anderson discussed here. I encourage you all to read that letter if you haven't yet done so. What surprises me is the broad spectrum of people who agree with this option. There are several co-signers of the letter whom I am acquainted with and with whom I have absolutely nothing in common with, either politically or socially. And there's also a sitting councilor with whom I rarely agree, who has also indicated favorability to this particular option. To me, this speaks volumes. This solution would not only move the city towards a more diverse pool of representatives, it is a unifier for people in the city. And in the current climate, I think anything that brings us together is a good thing. Thank you.
David Richmond.
Hi, my name is David Richmond. I live at 169 Fairmount Street. In this day and age, we can get advertisements after looking up something on Google on our smartphones. There's not an option for direct democracy here. I don't know how we got these 4 options. I think direct democracy, where there's one person, one vote, that's probably the way to go. We don't have that option, and my God, it's past my bedtime now, so that probably won't work out for me because of the way the economics is structured in Lowell, in Massachusetts, in this country right now. I don't know, so I haven't thought about this presentation, but it seems to me as it's trying to gather a representative body, it seems to me that it only makes sense that the representatives are actually representative of the districts. I mean, the historical situation, I mean, the acre was where the Irish people lived. And we know that that's the way we've settled this country. We put people in certain places, force them to stay there. We have to have district representation. Thank you.
Hi, Peter Martin, 62 Parkview. I want to start first by thanking the plaintiffs in the voting rights lawsuit, because it's very difficult to take a stand in this way and get attacked in certain ways and all kinds of things. But I think it's forced conversation on an issue that a lot of us know is long overdue, and there's been a lot of discussion about for a long time. So thank you for that. Change is hard, and thank you for stepping forward to be the agents of change. I also want to thank the council in advance for keeping an open mind. Change can also be scary, especially when you've worked so hard to be successful under this current system. But you were all first-time candidates once, maybe because you were a community activist, or you were inspired by a specific issue, or you felt called to serve. In that vein, I hope you'll embrace debate and welcome new perspectives as we look towards the future. As to the options themselves, there were a couple pressing questions for me from the beginning of this. One, why is voter turnout so poor in Lowell municipal elections? Because it wasn't always this way. And it's gotten worse and worse over time. I think voter engagement is the most important goal here. There's like a tiny percentage of us, people in this room, people watching on TV, people still read The Sun, read the agenda packets, watch city council meetings, dissect motions and votes. It's probably something wrong with us, honestly. But it's a healthy sign for the city when there's more of us doing this, when there's more people engaged, more people paying attention to all the good policy that you're working on every week. So we need to embrace that, do everything we can to get more residents engaged in the process. Two, why are candidates not more representative of the city's population? Because it's not just the council, it's not just the school committee, it's often the candidates. It's not just a racial diversity problem either. There's been a lack of gender, age, economic, geographic diversity. To add more perspectives to this weekly conversation, it's absolutely vital that we lower the barriers to running for office. I frequently speak with potential candidates. At least 90% don't end up running. Some aren't interested. Some have young children or commutes. Can't really do anything about that. The most consistent answer I hear, though, from the convincible people is that it's too difficult to run for office in Lowell. As you're all very well aware, having done it, it's not an easy thing to run at large in a city of 100,000 with around 60,000 registered voters. That's a significantly larger district than what the state reps face, and they raise 100 grand plus. It's even harder if you don't start with high name recognition or if you come from a neighborhood where turnout is low. So I believe strongly that we can best address both of these questions and find a Lowell compromise with one of the hybrid options. First, more residents will be engaged. We create small districts that approximate the historical neighborhoods as closely as possible. Candidates will indeed fish where the fish are in those districts, and the increased attention will lead to higher turnout. Second, I believe that the smaller districts will create incentives for more people to run. It's less daunting to consider running for office in your own neighborhood. It's easier to meet a large percentage of voters, so you can make a personal connection, and it is significantly cheaper, meaning you don't need to raise thousands of dollars or have extensive free time just to be a viable candidate. At the same time, I do think there's value to retaining a group of at-large councilors. First, it allows voters to continue to cast multiple votes so they don't feel they're wasting a vote if there's a strong incumbent that they don't like. Two, it prevents council meetings from turning into neighborhood battles, which I don't think any of you want to deal with, as there'll always be councilors that have to answer for the entire city. Almost the way I've been thinking of it is it's like a House and Senate bicameral legislation. You'll have a bit of a check and balance there. Three, it actually makes it much easier for a district councilor to run, win, become an established councilor, and then become an at-large councilor down the road. Maybe a state rep, maybe a state senator, continue on from there. Of the options presented, I do believe the 8-3 is the best on the table, and I hope that you'll vote for it today. I believe it's the option that best reflects Lowell, and I've found, as many of you have, a really wide base of support for finding a compromise option like this. The council's own subcommittee saw a lot of support for hybrid options. Community meetings, informal surveys, they've shown the same. It's also brought together interesting coalitions that might be surprising. Kim Scott and I, who spent the better part of a year here helping to lead opposite sides of the high school debate and fighting back and forth, have found common ground on this and joined together to advocate for district representation. And there are a ton of other people doing the same thing. After a pretty difficult period in the city, I actually find that it's something that's helping get people to actually talk to each other and to get along. So we urge you to do the same. Listen to Lowell residents who want a vote or a voice, embrace change, and support neighborhood representation. Thanks.
Ty Chum.
Good evening again. My name is Ty Chum, 79 Fairlawn Street. Now I want to say 8-3. I'll repeat again, 8-3 hybrid. I'm in support of it. As a candidate, this is something that's, it's tough. I've been thinking about it, like, what is 8-3 that's so appealing to me, right? When someone was saying close relationships, that's 8-3, right? A deeper understanding of your communities. When I'm talking communities, I'm talking about seniors. I'm talking about the LBGs plus community that we haven't reached out to, that we uphold, yes, on 3. I'm talking about the youth that we talk about. We're all for the kids, right? Yes, on 3 will make it happen. Because it's close relationship and a deeper understanding of where they come from, right? Each one of us have different value, different point of view in life, right? Different issues, and we live in different neighborhoods. So if we have a hybrid 8-3, this will make it even better, right? They would understand the issue, right? The commitment, right? Because you want to know what your candidate value is. You want to know their standards. When you look at candidates, these are hopeful for what you're looking for. Those two big things, their value and their standard. And this will show it more closely that if they have a closer value, closer standard to you, then it'll make it more easier for you to vote for them. So 8-3 it is. Yes, the money is an issue for first-time candidates, but I tell you what, if you have the passions and the commitment to help people, everybody, right? If you have the passion to commit to help people, doesn't matter what the age, doesn't matter what the gender, doesn't matter what the income is, doesn't matter what the mental capacity is, doesn't matter what the physical body is, you can do it. You can do it. Just put your name on the table and just do it. Because I did it. My daughter's 9 months, but do I make an excuse to not do it? No. I'm a refugee coming down here, and people help me out. Do I make an excuse to not do it? I owe a debt to society, right? You ever borrow anybody $1? Imagine, I came here for 30 years. I have this inkling feeling, right? I need to pay back. I need to pay back. That's 30 years of like unconsciously in my head, negative feeling, right? So now I got the chance to do it. So if you are in the business to help people and in the business to inspire people, then just do it. Don't let these kind of obstacles hold you back. But for me, right, I'm just saying 8-3 is the way to go. So I'm hoping everyone's in favor of it. Thank you very much.
No more speakers.
Thank you. All right. First, I need a motion to accept and place this presentation on file by Councilor Milonazo, second by Councilor Kennedy. Next, we have a vote to determine the 2 electoral systems for a non-binding referendum question. Waive the full reading, second reading by title. To select 2 electoral systems to be placed on the November ballot as a non-binding referendum question. Will the solicitor explain the process?
So this would be done by a voice vote, and councilors would be asked as we go through the voting process to name your 2 systems, and if the hybrid system is one of your choices to, at that time of initial voting, to specifically state which of those 3 hybrids you prefer. Once the voting is complete, the clerk will then tally and give the results to the council.
Councilor Elliott?
Could I ask a logistical question? So under option 2, there are 3 options. What if can we vote for more than one of those
No.
3? So we have 4 options in front of us, and we have to pick 2 of those. Because I firmly believe in district representation, no matter the composition, and I have for quite some time. So, I mean, I personally would like to vote for 2 of those hybrids under option 2. And why are we prohibited from that? Is that part of the requirements of the consent decree? I don't recall this.
So the intent is to vote for 2 of the 4 systems of government, and the hybrid options were just there to, again, present to the council, and I guess ultimately to the public, but really at this stage to present to the council the greatest number of choices under a hybrid type option. So when the voting takes place, what you're really looking at, what you're really voting on, are 2 of 4 distinct voting systems.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make some comments here, and I do have my choices, so it's not because I can't decide what I'm voting. I already went through this thoroughly, and I did attend that meeting at the Smith Baker, and I found it very interesting. First off, and it's a shame that I'm first tonight, but be that as it may, that's the luck of the draw. First off, we're voting for something that is not clearly defined, such as cost to implement whichever program, which option we decide, guidelines as to how we choose a mayor. Must you live in the district you're running in, are many unknowns, yet we must choose an outcome of something not clear with the consent decree. It's pretty hard for us to do that. It's like, the horse has escaped, but let's shut the barn door. I mean, it's kind of backwards. Having said that, I just want to make a statement personally here. I have my choices. I went through this very thoroughly. I'm not ashamed of anything that I say, and this is exactly how I mean it. But I'm concerned about, let's say, district representation when you establish 8 districts or 7 districts or whatever amount of districts. And yet, I firmly, firmly believe that there ought to be a law in place, and I would even make the motion at some point, I don't know if it's tonight or whatever, to completely make the rules as to if you are running as a district representative, you must live in that district for at least a year. I don't know if I could do that. It's not defined by the consent decree. But I'm thinking of in the past where, and they do this in the state Senate, where Congress, where you don't even have to live in the district to run for Congress. I'm not for that. I think that's wrong. And I'm going to state another thing. I have my desire on one particular issue here, one option, and I would like it to be such. But I sit in this seat not because of what I want to do. I firmly believe it's what the people want to do. And I say this because this is a non-binding issue that's going to go to the voters in November. And if they choose, whatever they choose, I firmly believe in the majority rule. So whatever the majority of people rule, that's what I'm going to choose. I'm not going to say, you know what, the people voted majority for this, but I want this. Rita Mercia wants this. I'm not going to do that. And I take it back again to the school issue. Whatever I wanted, which was Carly, the people chose downtown, and I agree with that. They're the majority rules. So that's my opinion. So we can go on and on about this. I'm choosing what the majority is choosing. Even if it's something that I really don't support, it isn't about what I think, it's about what the public chooses. So I have different questions, but Christine?
City Solicitor, then Councilman Milonazo.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing up that question with respect to the district representation. So following the presentation the other evening and the number of questions that were raised about that last week, following that, we had reached out to the Plaintiffs' Council, and on that point, namely, specifically, do you have to live in the district in order to be a candidate? And today, this afternoon, the plaintiffs the council got back to us after consulting with their clients, and they would prefer to have a district residency requirement, even though currently it is silent. So if that is the will of the council, the majority of the council, that's certainly something that we can put together and likely amend the consent decree to see that that gets accomplished.
Because why I say that is, if I live in Belvedere and I know that I'm not popular in my own neighborhood, gee, I think I'm going to run in the district in Pawtucketville. I think that's completely wrong, because I think they know what the issues are within their neighborhood, and I think that's how it should be. But I just wanted to say that.
You have any more questions?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Councilman Milonazo.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I too have my two options already picked out and prepared to vote, but I just would like to thank the ad hoc subcommittee on election laws and to thank the chairman, Councilor Noon, Councilor Kennedy, and Councilor Leahy, and all of us who did participate in those meetings. And I think we have 8 sets of minutes here going back quite some time. So they did yeoman's work. The public came out, and the subcommittee listened to the public. And I think that the law department, and to thank the law department and the work that they did through this whole process where we get to this consent decree. I think change is difficult, but I think change will be good for the city from the standpoint of majority-minority representation. So again, I just want to say thank you to all of those that have participated in this for the last 18 months. Thank you.
Okay. I think we also, for the public, the city council is going to make 2 choices, not necessarily the first and second choice, just choosing 2 selections. They're going to make 2 selections. Councilor Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question through you to the Christine O'Connor. I know people have said to me that they didn't like the choices that are on the table, and I know that a few of them have said I'm not going to vote for either one of them. So the question I have is, and I know that this is not binding. I happen to agree with Councilor Mercier as far as if the majority go in this direction, whatever direction it is, that's where my vote will end up going. Because I think at the end of the day, we might not always agree with our bosses, but the fact is the voters are our bosses. And I think that's something that we cannot push aside. And as far as if, for example, excuse me, in the voting, what if one option 15% vote for it, and the other option 20%, and you have 2/3 of the population don't vote for either one of them? What happens on something like that? Have you discussed that with the judge?
Madam Solicitor.
So the consent decree specifies that the council would give great deference to the results of the, excuse me, non-binding ballot. However, we don't know what those results are. It could be that, as you gave an example, it could be that it's a virtual tie, or that one just slightly edged out another. So ultimately, it comes back to the council, and the council can take a look at those results. If there is a clear referendum, then the expectation would be that the council would adhere to that. But absent that, these are decisions that ultimately rest with you, the council, and it remains to your judgment. And it was done specifically for those reasons.
Are you all set, Mr. Conway? Any further questions? All right, Councilman Noon.
Thank you, sir. I want to thank Councilman also for the kind word, and you, Mr. Mayor, for tasking me to task ad hoc subcommittee on this subject matter. But I also want to thank City Solicitor for her summation of where we were and why we changed, and now this option. So, thank you.
All right, I need a motion to have the vote by Council Milonazo, second by Council Mercia. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Mercia.
Option 2, 8 district, 3 at large, and option 3.
Council Milonazo.
Option 2B and option 3.
Mayor Samaras.
Option 2, the hybrid, 8 and 3, and option 3, at-large ranked voting.
Council Noon.
Thank you. I thought you're gonna, miss me. Anyway, option 2, B, and option 3.
Council Cirillo. Council Conway.
Option 2B, A3, and option 3.
Council Elliott.
Option 2B and option 3.
Council Kennedy.
To make it unanimous, option 2, 8 and 3, and option 3.
Council Leahy.
Option 2B and 3.
There's count of 8 for option 2B, 8-3, and option 3, ranked choice voting, I believe.
Thank you.
That was easy to tally.
Next, we have, taken out of order, motion 11-3. Council Mercia requests vote of the City Council to support a resolution to not make Massachusetts a sanctuary state for fear of losing federal funds. Need a second?
Second for
Council
discussion.
Conway? For discussion? Council Mercia?
I
We
think
have
there's
we have
people,
speakers here.
we'll let the people rip my head off. I think they're all against me, but that's fine. That's democracy at its best. Come on down.
Lisa Arnold.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Madam Manager, Mayor, Councilors. I am actually here to speak on Councilor Cirillo's behalf. She regrets deeply that she could not be here for both the vote we just took and this vote. She would much rather be here than where she is. But despite her desire to defy her doctor's orders, her family and friends talked her out of it. So she's with her doctor, she's getting healthy, and I'm here to speak on her behalf. I am Lowell City Councilor Karen Cirillo, and I believe that all residents have a right to interact with the police and to report any crimes or threats to their safety without having to fear being asked about their citizenship status, which is similar to the Massachusetts state police policy already in place. Under this provision, persons having committed a crime will still be prosecuted under the law. This will greatly improve community policing and increase safety for all residents. It avoids our local police having to act as federal immigration agents at state taxpayers' expense, leaving them free to protect due process for all while keeping our streets safe for residents. Additionally, the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in a 2-to-1 decision ruled that the President's executive order to withhold federal funds from so-called sanctuary cities violates the Constitution's separation of powers principle. The opinion, written by Chief Justice Sidney R. Thomas, states that under the Constitution, spending power rests with Congress. Without congressional authorization, the current administration may not, quote, may not redistribute or withhold properly appropriated funds, unquote, in order to carry out its own policy goals. Further quoting, the administration has not even attempted to show that Congress authorized it to withdraw federal grant monies from jurisdictions that do not agree with the current administration's immigration strategies, nor could it, Thomas wrote. In fact, Congress has frequently considered and thus far rejected legislation accomplishing the goals of the executive order. In summary, I strongly, with every fiber of my being, recommend a no vote on this motion. Additionally, I recommend that the council agree to support the Safe Communities Act for the state of Massachusetts. Thank you.
Juan Castaneda.
Good evening. My name is Juan Castaneda. Thank you for the opportunity. I come to Lowell in 1988, and I fall in love with the city. I start searching about the history. I read about Mr. Francis Cabot Lowell, and I fall in love and says, wow, this guy has a dream. And he worked hard for Lowell and many cities to give the opportunity to some people like Walton, Lawrence, for the immigrants to come and work here. And like you know, it comes from everywhere. Our island, Greek, French Canadians, many people come to work here to transform the city. That way we can have what we enjoy now. But when you look around, many people are still coming to this city to work. And when you interact with these people, you heard amazing histories, amazing ways, the way they come to this city, the way they have, the things they have to go through. But when you hear them, you start realizing how hard it is for some people. When I heard this history, it changed many things in my life. A woman came to this city in 1972 and left 5 kids in her country. She came here by herself, 25-year-old, worked 2 full times in the mills in this city to provide to those 5 kids in that country to pay bills here and pay bills there. And those kids grow up with a father over there working hard. But one of those kids go to the army to fight against the drug cartels. He get trained by the American army to go because that kid saw the injustice in those countries. They saw, finally, that girl who come to this country, bring them here, 4 kids of them. And because the people know what that guy was doing down there, the cartels killed his father and her older son. And that woman who worked bravely here, bring those 4 kids here, save those 4 kids. That was my mom. She saved my life. She worked 2 full times in these mills. Lincoln Textile, John Fabrics. I want to introduce to you an immigrant. Ma, come here, please. She saved my life. She is my hero. She saved my life. That's why I love Lowell. She opened the door for my mother. My kids are from here. I have a daughter, 28-year-old, a son, 24-year-old, and a 17-year-old. Immigrants are not criminals. They're running away from the violence. They're running away from the hunger in those countries. This is not the sense of Lowell. This is not the choice of Lowell. You have to see the people. You don't see immigrants in the corners of the city. Believe me, the immigrants work so hard because they don't receive no help, no Section 8, no food stamps, no exercise, nothing. They work 2 full time just to produce and trying to save those kids' lives, to change the generations, like our ancestors did for all of you. All of you come from different immigrants. You are 3rd, 4th generation, I don't know. But we gotta be worthy of those people who sacrificed their lives for all of us to be here tonight. Please, don't allow this to happen to Lowell. This will hurt our city. We are hurt enough. The people is tired. You have to open the doors for the new generation, for our kids. They want to change Lowell. They want to help, but the problem, Lowell needs help. Lowell needs the community leaders to connect those people with the city. We're not against you. We need to work together to come with simple solutions to do better for Lowell. That don't mean you're not doing a good job. Believe me, you're doing an excellent job, but you gotta, the problem of Lowell is the mind. We have to demo that stronghold we built to separate people. We gotta work together. Please, don't allow this to happen in Lowell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Marissa Dupont.
Hi, my name is Marissa Dupont. I live at 208 Mammoth Road, Lowell. I have some handouts here. I'm going to read a statement from the ACLU. Is it okay to pass those out? So first, I just want to read a brief statement that's from myself personally, and then I'll read the statement from the ACLU. I was incredibly dismayed and embarrassed to learn of Councilor Mercier's proposed resolution against the Safe Communities Act. Lowell is a city of immigrants. The Safe Communities Act would make our state and our city safer for all residents. By not allowing our resources to support the efforts of ICE, the city would not only save money, but it would also lower crime. When immigrants aren't afraid to go to the police for fear of being deported, they are much more likely to report crimes. This is especially important in instances of domestic violence. I ask all of you to stand against Councilor Mercier's resolution. Thank you. Now, this is the statement from the ACLU. Testimony submitted to the Lowell City Council in opposition to Agenda Item 11.3 by Matt Allen, Field Director, ACLU of Massachusetts. I am submitting this testimony to encourage the Lowell City Council to reject any resolution to not make Massachusetts a sanctuary state. The ACLU supports local welcoming city ordinances and pending state legislation called the Safe Communities Act, S1401H3573. These policies limit law enforcement agencies' cooperation with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE, focusing local and state resources on enforcing state and local laws rather than federal immigration laws. In doing so, these policies protect the public safety and demonstrate inclusive community values. These policies do not prevent local and state law enforcement from detaining, charging, and prosecuting anyone suspected of breaking state or local laws. They are crucial to protecting public safety because when local police collaborate with ICE, it erodes trust in the community. When people believe that any interaction with the city agency, especially police, is likely to get them deported, they will not seek help, they will not report crimes, and they will not cooperate with police in fighting crime. Furthermore, safe and welcoming community ordinances and laws are about community values. When our immigrant neighbors are in danger of being deported, we should stand by them instead of supporting policies that help split up families and drive immigrants underground. Finally, opposing such policies will not increase Massachusetts' eligibility for federal grants. The ACLU generally agrees with the letter drafted by Harris Freeman, which is what I passed out, a professor at Western New England School of Law, to the city of Greenfield at a recent hearing about the Greenfield Safe City Ordinance. The letter examines the impact of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision, City of Los Angeles versus Attorney General Barr, on cities and towns seeking federal funds. According to the letter, the Greenfield Safe City Ordinance does not allow the federal government to deny or remove community-oriented policing services funding already granted to the city, and rescinding the ordinance would not improve the city's chance of receiving a federal grant. The only way that states or municipalities can gain advantage in the granting process under Trump administration policies is for a local or state government to, quote, affirmatively demonstrate that it is actively using its local resources to enforce federal immigration policy, end quote. This means that local governments must honor ICE detainers by holding immigrants arrested on any criminal charge for ICE detention. In Massachusetts, any state agency or municipality that honors ICE detainers would be in violation of the 2017 Lunn versus Commonwealth Supreme Judicial Court decision, which declared that authorities in Massachusetts lack the statutory authority to honor such detainers. As Professor Freeman stated in his letter, in sum, the ruling in no way undermines the legality of any of the safe community or trust ordinances enacted by scores of communities across America. And as the decision itself makes clear, local governments do not improve their chances of being awarded a COPS grant if they do not enact or rescind a trust or safe city ordinance. These arguments apply equally to state legislation to protect immigrants' rights, including the Safe Communities Act, which is currently being considered by the state legislature. For these reasons, I ask that you vote against Agenda Item 11.3, a vote to support a resolution to not make Massachusetts a sanctuary state for fear of losing federal funds. Thank you very much.
Judith Durant.
Judith Durant, 50 Viola Street. I am very upset by this motion. I don't understand how it is even possible for a city that boasts about its immigrant population, that exudes pride in the annual folk festival, and that sees city council members attending flag-raising ceremonies for our immigrant neighbors, to entertain a motion such as this. Councilor Mercier uses the term sanctuary state. This is a politically charged term. The right sees sanctuary states as places where illegal immigrants are protected, while the left views sanctuary states as areas where undocumented immigrants are protected from aggressive attempts at deportation. A so-called sanctuary state limits its cooperation with federal immigration enforcement agents to protect undocumented immigrants who have come to this country to make a living. While some undocumented immigrants are protected, those who commit serious crimes are turned over to authorities. Massachusetts has to date passed no legislation regarding sanctuary. House and state Senate bills entitled An Act to Protect the Civil Rights and Safety of All Massachusetts Residents have been introduced but linger in committee with no immediate action in sight. Councilor Mercier states her reason for proposing this resolution is fear of losing federal funds. In fact, the courts have blocked efforts by the administration to withhold money from sanctuary cities, including an executive order issued by the president in 2017 that would have barred them from receiving federal grants except as deemed necessary for law enforcement purposes. Courts also barred the Justice Department from imposing new immigration enforcement-related conditions on the Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant grants, which is the largest source of federal funding to state and local jurisdictions. The only case I was able to find where federal money was denied to a municipality relates to community-oriented policing services, or COPS grants, which are used to hire police officers. In 2017, under then Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the Justice Department decided to give extra points to cities that listed immigration enforcement as a priority. Los Angeles applied for a grant that year, but listed building community trust instead of immigration enforcement. They failed to win the grant and sued. In July, a federal appeals court upheld the Justice Department's decision to give preferential treatment to such cities. In October of 2018, the city of Lowell was awarded a COPS grant to stop school violence. The Lowell Police Department has a policy which states that the departments will not undertake immigration-related investigations and shall not routinely inquire into the immigration status of persons encountered during normal police operations. This policy was adopted in 2015, yet the said city was awarded a COPS grant in 2018 just the same. The Trump administration's stated policy is to target virtually any unauthorized immigrant, regardless of their length of residence in the U.S. or their social, economic, or family ties here. We've heard stories of adult-aged persons who were adopted by U.S. citizens when they were babies, being deported to their country of birth because the adopted parents failed to do the necessary paperwork. Imagine being sent back to a country where you know no one and don't even speak the language. Over the past couple of years, stories of non-citizen veterans being deported have made major headlines. As it turns out, there is a process in place that provides extra consideration for those immigration cases, but federal officials have not been following it. The issue has affected at least hundreds of veterans, but the full extent is unknown because of a lack of record keeping. The current administration is now working to denaturalize a citizen who was naturalized more than 20 years ago. The government determined that a 62-year-old truck driver in Florida, naturalized in 2006, had become a citizen fraudulently by failing to disclose a past deportation order that he wasn't even aware of because his now deceased attorney never notified him. The immigration policies of this administration are, in my opinion, deplorable, and I don't think Lowell should be a party to these policies. And since it is doubtful that Massachusetts is going to pass the legislation I referred to anytime soon, and since the federal government has thus far banned denying federal funding based on immigration enforcement policies, except for the stated COPS grants, and since Lowell prides itself as a city of immigrants that will celebrate Welcoming Week just next month, I ask you to deny this motion for all of our sakes.
Joseph Boyle.
Good evening, councilors. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you all. I want to especially thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of weeks ago, I saw you act very expeditiously in response to a problem of fake cops in this city when the constable issue came up. You understood and you reacted to the threat that law enforcement coming into this city, doing whatever by their own rules, not in tune with what the City of Lowell police and the community policing strategy is about, and the damage that that would do. You don't need me to stand here and reiterate what the ACLU said and Hope Anderson said and Judith Durant just said about how community policing and the trust between police and vulnerable communities works, because I saw you all at that meeting explain it yourselves. I saw you all listen to the chief explain it to you. Well, we have another fake cop problem in this city and in this state and in this country, and that is the fake cops from ICE coming into communities doing the same thing, pursuing their agenda, not in line with what cities are trying to do. And they come in with their fake police vests and their fake warrants, and they scare the hell out of people, and they ruin the trust that good police departments like ours work very hard to try to create. The Safe Communities Act was written to protect us from that. We have heavy-handed, intrusive federal immigration authority coming into cities and ruining the good work that they've done, scaring the hell out of people, and convincing people, families that perhaps have mixed immigration status with some citizens, some documented residents, and some undocumented residents, they no longer want to talk to the police because they're afraid that the police are working with ICE, or they don't quite understand the difference between federal police and federal ICE, local police and federal immigration enforcement. And we can't let that happen. And this bill would help protect us. It would help ensure that that would not be happening and that we would have some degree of protection. So the last time an ill-advised, ill-thought-out motion to weigh in on a statewide issue was brought before this chamber. This body managed to protect the city's honor and protect our reputation by not just not passing it, but by passing a substitute motion to support, in that case, it was the right of transgendered people to access public accommodations. I urge you to undo whatever damage has been done to the trust between our community and our community police by this motion, by taking a similar action and passing a resolution tonight to back the Safe Communities Act. Thank you very much.
Stephen Malagodi.
Hello, councilors. My name is Steve Malagodi. I live at 200 Market Street. Thank you for letting me tell you how I feel about this motion. This is an embarrassment to the city of Lowell. It's embarrassing. Just a couple of days ago at St. Anne's down the street, there was a commemoration of the beginning of the onset of 400 years of slavery in this country. They rang the bell for 4 minutes, a minute for each of those 400 years of the abomination of slavery. Just before the horrendous conclusion of that era, the city of Lowell openly defied federal law by defying the Fugitive Slave Act. City of Lowell provided refuge for people who needed refuge. Why? Because it was the moral and the right thing to do. Now, there was a gentleman there who grew up in Ghana, and when he was a boy, he played soccer, football, on the grounds of the Cape Coast Castle in Ghana, a place, notorious place of embarkation of African peoples to the United States. He came to Lowell. Lowell welcomed him. And while taking a course at UMass Lowell, it was there that he learned the history of the Cape Coast Castle. Lowell welcomed him. Nobody in this room needs to be reminded of Lowell's extraordinary history of welcoming people who needed refuge, who needed a place to work and a safe space to live, people from the north across the Canadian border, people from the South and Central America, people from the Caribbean, from Africa, the Middle East, and all across Asia. People have been welcomed here in Lowell. Now, it's really odd because there is no sanctuary state legislation in Massachusetts. There's none proposed. Furthermore, as has been said, the federal courts have repeatedly stated that a process of retribution against cities and states is unconstitutional. So I don't understand, what the intent of this motion is. There is no sanctuary state. It's unconstitutional for the federal government to withhold funds. So what is the intent of this motion? I don't know. I can't read minds. I'm sure the maker of this motion will tell us, her head still being on her shoulders, will tell us what the intent was. Is it just political posturing for the upcoming election? Is it a racist dog whistle? That's what it sounds like, a racist dog whistle. Now, I urge councilors to vote against this motion. But if you do vote for this motion, please, please, don't come to the next flag-raising ceremony and say pretty words about all the nice immigrants. Don't do that. Please don't show your face at a welcoming week event. Councilors, vote against this motion. is an embarrassment.
Jonathan Grossman.
Jonathan Grossman, 83 Varnum Ave. Thank you for the opportunity. That last speech was a tough act to follow. I'll just make one point. I've been here before speaking in behalf of taking action to address future climate change that we all have to address. And this city council has been a leader in taking action in that direction. Whether it's passing a resolution to be 100% renewable by 2035 or the recent decision to quadruple the amount of renewable energy available to our ratepayers here through the community aggregation program. And I'm mentioning that because that's not all we have to do to prepare for climate change. Climate change has already been responsible for a significant amount of the migration that we see, of people that we see today. People move around because they can no longer live where they used to live. That's going to dramatically increase. If more cities and towns and states and countries take the steps that we've taken, it won't increase quite as much, but it's going to dramatically increase in the future, and we have to be prepared, and all people have to be prepared to deal with it. And so humanity can make the decision that we're all going to retreat to our corners, pull up our ladders, and fight with each other. Or we could decide that we're going to try to work together, get along, and share what we got on this planet to make it as good as we can for everybody. That's the kind of city I want to live in. And I think that's the kind of city most Lowellians want to live in. And this resolution, whatever its intent, sends exactly the opposite message. Let's not send that message. Thank you.
David Richmond.
Hi, my name's David Richmond. I live on 169 Fairmount Street. Between 1965 and 1973, the U.S. dropped 2.7 million tons of explosives on Cambodia. Hundreds of thousands of Cambodians were killed in the bombings. People working the farms moved into the cities hoping for safety, and the food supply systems broke down, causing widespread famine. Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, a fringe, nationalistic, and militaristic group, said they would avenge the dead to gain support, and they murdered 1 million more Cambodians who didn't think the way they did. In the 1980s, during the Reagan administration, the United States sent 3,000 troops to Honduras to fight Nicaraguans. When the Congress of the United States found out, they tried to put an end to it, but the operation continued. A CIA-backed group sold arms to Iran and used that money to fund United States-trained mercenaries. This was the Iran-Contra scandal. I don't know how many Hondurans died. I don't know how many Nicaraguans died. But whenever they look, they find mass graves. In 1970, the CIA conspired to assassinate René Schneider, the Chilean commander-in-chief of the army, because the CIA was trying to promote a military coup, and René Schneider believed in the Chilean constitution and democracy.
Excuse me, sir. I mean, I think you're going off the direction. We're here to address this particular issue. You're now naming CIA operations which have no...
I disagree.
Well,
I am establishing, and I'm pausing my time, I am establishing the difference between a refugee and an immigrant.
well, please.
People at the
you only
border
have
are
you only
refugees
have,
by the actions of the United
You only have
States.
5 minutes to do that, so please.
Let me continue.
continue online, though.
Augusto Pinochet got his promotion to Commander-in-Chief of the Army, and when all the pieces were set, Augusto Pinochet, in control of the Army, took over Chile. On September 11, 1973, President Allende is said to have committed suicide with an AK-47 in the presidential palace, and then the death squads. In Guatemala in 1954, President Jacobo Arbenz was overthrown in a United States-backed operation. The reason was he proposed to buy the uncultivated land of United Fruit, Chiquita, at the value that United Fruit declared for tax purposes, and so a coup, and then, inevitably, the death squads. The United States has a terrible history since World War II, since the founding of this country. We live in a country that was taken from Native Americans and whose wealth and development were facilitated in great part by the institution of slavery. I point out this terrible history to make the distinction between what invasion really looks like and what flight from terror looks like, what refugees look like, and what immigrants look like. If we want to be a country based on justice, we have to acknowledge when we as a country were unjust. To deny refugee status to our fellow humans, especially from those S-hole countries that our intervention have created and continue to create. If we deny refugee status, we should deny our Christianity. If we deny refugee status, we should deny that we are civilized. If we deny refugee status, we should deny our humanity. The motion that should be under consideration is how to make reparation for crimes against humanity that this country is responsible for.
Excuse me, you have 5 minutes. You have to come to closure.
That would truly be
You have to come
American
to closure.
exceptionalism.
You have to come to closure. Thank you.
Part of it was your 1 minute.
Thank you. Next.
David Hasek.
I don't know. We're part of Europe. Paul Gaudette.
Good evening. My name is Paul Gaudette. I live at 4 Bertram Street in the Highlands section. I am a vice president of the Merrimack Valley Project, which is an organization of over 25 years working for social justice in the valley. We have 3 chapters: Haverhill, Lawrence, and Lowell. I'm the chair of the Lowell chapter. And I'm here to speak on their behalf because the protection of immigrants' rights and their treatment has been a priority of Merrimack Valley Project for many years now. We feel that it's important for our area that we respect our best traditions as Americans of welcoming immigrants to our shores. In terms of our activities, we've sponsored Know Your Rights workshops for those who might be undocumented. We've helped establish the Merrimack Valley Interfaith Sanctuary Network, and we were partially responsible for the passage in Lawrence of their Trust Act in 2015. I think the matter at hand is what kind of a community are we? And I believe, and my organization believes, that it's building trust between law enforcement and the immigrant community that benefits everyone. We don't want to see those who are living here to be afraid to approach police officers in cases of domestic abuse or in cases of wage theft or other matters because they're in fear of deportation. And while we don't object to removing bad actors in the cases where there's a court order, where someone is guilty of a crime, that they need to be brought to law enforcement. We understand that, but we fear that the climate that we're in right now is a call for people of conscience to stand up for those who have irregular status in our communities, but who are contributing citizens. So for those and many other reasons, I recommend that we vote against this motion. Thank you.
Jack Breen.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank the council for giving us the opportunity tonight to talk on this motion. Just apologize 1 second. Good evening, members of the Lowell City Council. My name is Jack Breen, and I live at 49 Daniel Street. I'm speaking here tonight in opposition to Councilor Mercier's motion that the City Council support a resolution against the Safe Communities Act. I do so because now, more than ever, when we have an administration that is using all of the tools of the federal government to terrorize immigrant communities, the City of Lowell should be doing all that it can to protect our own immigrant communities. The history of Lowell is a history of immigration. It would be tragically ironic if a city like Lowell, that truly embodies the American ideal of a melting pot, were to condemn a law that would make life much safer and more secure for immigrants here. This motion is predicated on worries that the city will lose federal funding if the Safe Communities Act is passed. However, President Trump does not have the power to withdraw federal funds from sanctuary jurisdictions. The constitutionality of that order is being challenged in courts across the country, and courts in California and Oregon have already ruled that the Trump administration cannot withhold funds to sanctuary cities. Condemning the Safe Communities Act out of fear of an imagined threat is not pragmatic, it's racist. It's completely unnecessary to take such strong action against the Safe Communities Act when the risk of losing funding over it is really not a threat. By contrast, the stakes are much higher for immigrant communities, and we should take every opportunity to protect them. I'm extremely disappointed, nay, I'm appalled to see that members of this council carry out the nativism and xenophobia of the Trump administration at the local level under dishonest pretenses. I urge all members of the council to strongly consider opposing Councilor Mercier's motion, and for those who do support it, I strongly urge you to reconsider. As Nelson Mandela once said, a nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. Thank you.
That concludes the speaking aspect of this program. Councilor Mercier? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I believe we called you up before. Please. Who wants to speak? Okay.
Who's registered?
Are you registered?
Yeah, I had
Yes.
earlier on. I'll be quick.
Who's your name?
Okay, he just needs clerk needs your name.
Ann Furtado,
Oh, yeah.
230 River Road.
You were called previously. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. I'll be very brief. Thank you for this opportunity to talk. This is a democratic process. You're listening, that's a good thing. I just want to say there's three things. What are the benefits to this? What's the price? What's the harm? What's the cost? And what is our message? You represent us. This is the city's message. We live in strange times, crazy times. I mean, I can't, every day your head spins. People with imagination came here. Men of courage, they built a marvel, an engineering marvel. They brought immigrants, they put people together, they built a better life, they persevered. Those are our roots. I lived in this city for 37 years. I grew up in Tewksbury. I don't love Tewksbury the way I love Lowell. I love my home. I'm home here. I love the diversity. I love the flavor. I like how people get along. You walk down the street, you don't think twice. There's miracles everywhere you look. If you've ever gone to a Middlesex graduation, you see those How many flags? How many people? How many countries are represented? So let's call this for what it is. It's fear-based. There is no reason for it. We've already established this. There's no benefit to it, really. There's no need for it. That's already been established. But it's also, the fear is for non-white people. We need those people. This poor woman, what her son just said, that's representative of those people. They come here and they renew us and they become a part of us. You can't see this, but this is a picture of me and my granddaughter at the Lowell Folk Festival. They had a photo booth. I saw Colombian bands. I saw a klezmer girl band. I saw Greek bands. I saw everybody from everywhere that was accepted, no matter what. What's the cost to the city if we do this? What's the cost to our reputation? He's right, it's an embarrassment. It's not right. This city, of all places, this is not right for the city.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to
Can you give
speak.
your name, please? You did register?
My name is Dee Halzak, and I live at 318 Pawtucket Street.
Just for the record, you were called, okay? We're sorry you didn't hear it.
I'm here tonight to implore you to not pass the proposed resolution against the Safe Communities Act. I won't repeat what others have said about the effect on reporting crime or on community policing. I will say that the execution of the current federal administration's cruel immigration policies is dependent on diverting local police's resources and time and priorities to enforcing an agenda that is, quite frankly, based on racist hate and fear. The feds don't have the staff to round up all the people they want to, which is why they want to use local police to do some of the work. And the relationships our community policing depend on are threatened by using our police to do ICE's dirty work. The horrible abuses that we have seen linked to ICE in the past year make it clear that to allow our community police to be used to enforce those policies is to make them complicit in inhumane practices that many consider to be violations of international law and literally crimes against humanity. This is not something I would want to see forced on our police. It can be traumatizing for the enforcers as well as for the detained. As for the fear of federal retaliation, as others have said, the courts have already ruled that that's not permissible. Whatever one's feelings about undocumented immigration, the excesses of ICE make it imperative that cities and states not allow their law enforcement priorities and budgets to be diverted simply to enable a hate-based federal agenda. We have got to stand up against the hate. As a city with a significant percentage of immigrants in its population, it is important that Lowell not pass a resolution that sends an unwelcoming message to its foreign-born residents by implying agreement with policies that can and have hurt people in our community and devalue many of them. Bottom line, the legislature is going to do what it's going to do, whatever the city council decides tonight. So why pass a resolution that only has the impact of seeming to approve of current inhumane policies directed at some of our people? If anything, in the current climate of xenophobia, instead of passing the proposed resolution, the city council should be affirming its support for all of its residents. Thank you.
Has anybody else registered that wasn't called?
Hello, when I called, I signed up for motion 7.1 and 11.3. Hope Anderson, 16 Weatherby Avenue.
Fine, you're all set.
Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you. I wanted to make a brief point, which is that I think it's important that we still consider, despite the slowness of the state legislature in acting on the Safe Communities Act, that we still consider the Safe Communities Act as viable legislation, because I know in the past there's been some concern about whether passing policies that are regarding sanctuary or trust in one community or another one pits one community against another one and paints a target on an immigrant's back if they live in one community versus another one. And with all those discussions aside, I think that's why it's important that we support statewide legislation so that it doesn't pit one community against another one, and that we can make sure that everyone in Massachusetts is protected under the law. And I wanted to read a tweet from Matt Cameron, an asylum lawyer based in Boston, who's been working on asylum cases since 2006. He tweeted this last night. "I can't go back," my client told me as soon as he sat down at the table in ICE detention. "They will kill me." I believed him. The judge agreed that they probably would kill him just before he denied his asylum claim. He was deported. They did. I just found out today. I just want to make sure we all know that Lowell needs not to be complicit in the antics of this administration and the things that are happening that are completely tragic. Children are being denied entry into the U.S. to receive needed medical care, or their parents are not being allowed with them. I just read about another 2 cases today. So thank you, Madam Manager, Mr. Mayor, and councilors for listening.
Is there anyone else that registers to speak? No, we're all set then. Thank you. Councilman Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion will irritate some folks. I know this, it already has, but as someone said, this is democracy, and we have a right to disagree. Some folks will even say that I'm not in support of immigrants. That is the furthest from the truth. My father was an immigrant. His mother came to this country from Poland legally, established a place to live and a job, and sent her son a year later at the age, she sent for her son a year later at the age that he was 7 years old. He learned English, he became a United States citizen, and he worked in the mills for 38 years. There was nothing illegal about this scenario. As the law sits right now, each city or town can choose what they want to become. With the law that states, make Massachusetts a sanctuary state, dictates to every city or town to become one, gives us no choice. In Lowell, in essence, we already are a sanctuary city. We do not need to put a state-mandated law in place to make it easier for illegal aliens who do egregious acts to not be deported, but we give them cover by this law instead. This is my opinion, and I believe it's wrong. As it sits right now, we do not have our police department ask for a green card or ask if they are illegal aliens. I have not seen nor heard of any deported for lack of possessing a license or even asked to show a green card. This is a misconception, and it just doesn't happen. To do so, the police would not be following operation policy. Making the state a sanctuary state is a solution in search of a problem, and I personally would pick inconvenience any day over jeopardizing the safety of our city. There is already an established existing policy, and the Lowell Police Department recognizes and values the vast diversity of this city that it serves. I have yet to receive even one call at my home that says otherwise. Have any of my colleagues received any calls that I don't know about? Maybe they have. I haven't. The policy in place in this city acknowledges that enforcement of the nation's immigration laws is a primary responsibility of the federal government. There are 3 main segments of this policy that is in place right now: that a person's right to file a police report, participate in community policing activities is not and shall not be contingent upon the individual providing proof of a citizenship or documented immigration status. The officer shall not question any person about his or her specific citizenship or immigration status unless pertinent to local or state criminal criminal activity. Officers shall not request a passport, visa, resident alien cards, i.e. a green card or travel document in lieu of or in addition to driver's license or other standard forms of identification. Anyone that is a threat to public safety of my city, I have no sympathy for them. So if they have not committed a crime themselves, and whether they are legal or not, they have no reason to be scared. I bring this motion forward because I am a firm believer that we take steps to care for our already overburdened homeless population and school system. My philosophy is simple. I can't feed the neighbor's children when my own are starving. I can't serve you correctly if funding will be lowered because of our actions. The governor has said he would veto any sanctuary state bill. I do not want to cater to individuals who knowingly enter this country illegally and hide behind laws that will ultimately affect this city's operation by adding an additional burden to our current city services. And I will tell you, I am very proud of every single flag raising that I have attended, and I will keep doing so, because I'm not against immigrants. I'm against the word of people that are illegal. Illegal. That's what, you break the law, you rape a child, you do anything else, you should go. That's my opinion.
Right, please. No! Control ourselves. Everybody has the right to speak. I'm not going to have any of this type of outbreak. That's it. Continue.
I'm all set, thank you.
Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The bill that Councilor Mercier is referring to or wants a resolution on isn't called the Sanctuary State Bill or the Sanctuary Cities Bill. It's called the Safe Communities Act, and it's right now Senate 1401. And it has 21 co-sponsors in the state Senate. That's 21 out of 40. That's a majority. It also has 24 sponsors in the House of Representatives. I am proud that I am one of the co-sponsors of this legislation. And I don't understand, or I'm confused by the way the motion is worded, because as everybody should know, the SJC came out with a ruling back in, I think, June of 2018, which basically made Massachusetts a sanctuary state, if that's the term you want to use, or basically said that ICE shouldn't be in here. This is something that we visited a couple of years ago on the city council, and I thought the matter was settled then. Furthermore, when I was on the school committee, which was for a 2-year period, there was some concern with the school department over certain kids that were going to school, students that were going to school that were afraid that if they went to school for the day, that their parents wouldn't be there when they got home, or that they wouldn't go to school because they were afraid that ICE agents would come into school and take them out. And so the school committee at that time passed a resolution, I believe unanimously, that prevented ICE agents from going into these schools in Lowell, which I think was also a good thing to do at the time. And I still think it's a good thing to do. I don't understand why we're doing this at all. It makes absolutely no sense to me, and I think it's really a bad thing for Lowell to be doing. Of all the communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the one community that takes more pride in their diversity and in the diverse population that they have here is Lowell. And there are, as has been said before, at least 24 times, usually on a Saturday, when we meet in front of this building to raise a flag for one community or another. And at that time, everybody takes great pride and boasts about the fact that we are a diverse and welcoming community. This resolution is going to have absolutely no bearing on what happens to the legislation. The legislation would do nothing to change the way it is now. in Massachusetts. Absolutely nothing. It'll be the same with whether the legislation passes or it doesn't pass. Everything in Massachusetts will be the same. What the legislation does do is put it into law, whereas right now we just dependent on an SJC decision and the Massachusetts Constitution, by the way. So I don't really understand what the point of the legislation is. I think it's really bad. I think that it's bad for this city to go on record as wanting to be in opposition to a sanctuary city. It's just, it's really bad for, and the people that have spoken that said that they were embarrassed by this, I'm embarrassed by this as well. It's just, there's no reason for this. And actually, if Councilor Cirillo was here this evening, I would probably make a substitute motion that we go on record in favor of supporting Senate 1401 rather than what's before us right now. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Roll call.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I actually had an opportunity to speak with Senator/Councilor Kennedy today, and I actually did look at the Senate Bill 1401, which is the Safe Communities Act. And as Councilor Kennedy said, there's a majority of the senators that have already signed on, and I think the total, as of this printing as of today, there's over 46 or 48 between the House and the Senate that have actually signed on. And I hope it does get a public airing, and I hope it does move through. And I would certainly support us in supporting the Safe Communities Act, just by looking at the names of the senators and the representatives that have signed on to this. And again, I think from the standpoint of us, the city of Lowell being an immigration city, my grandfather came over here in 1905. He was here 21 years before he could send for his wife and 2 kids. And it's just amazing to me that, and he got a job here working for the B&M Railroad, raised a family, and was successful because Lowell is and continues to, or was and continues to be, an immigrant city. So again, I'm going to vote against the motion, but I think from the standpoint of what colleagues have said relative to what the SJC has already voted, that the Safe Communities Act on the state level is the way for us to go and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the speaker for staying up late to speak passionately about how they feel. And they focus on the great diversity that Lowell pride ourselves in. Let me focus on just public safety and community policing. We pride ourselves, the city police department, that community policing is the cornerstone of our policing policy. The past chief has spent time and resources to build and foster the trust between a public safety official and the community they serve. I want to emphasize that I do not support those who commit criminal act. Those with criminal warrant, whether undocumented or documented, are to be treated the same. Our chief has made an express policy not to question people about their immigration status when they are enforced traffic violation. Our chief knows that to require his officer to enforce immigration law will undermine community policing. We spent many years to build on this trust. Our residents, I feel that our residents feel less safe. If this was to happen, they feel that they can no longer go to the police department to report being a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, property crime, or witness of the crime. They will stay silent for fear of being questioned about their immigration status, detained and deported. Moreover, we, the city, do not have the resource to do the enforcement work for ICE. Other communities who have committed to community policing and not enforcing the rule, the ICE rule, have yet lost their federal funding. Lowell did not lose its federal funding, the COP grant. So I urge my fellow councilor to vote against this motion. Thank you.
I just want to say that, so I appreciate all the speakers that came down tonight. After listening to tonight, thinking about my own personal history, my family, my children, you know, I personally don't think, after the discussion tonight, that maybe this motion should be in the city chambers. So I think tonight I'm going to, I've changed my mind, and I'm going to not support the motion. I appreciate everybody that came down. I'm not looking for applause. I'm just saying that I understand where the motion came from, but I have changed my mind, and I appreciate that you came down tonight. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If you allow me, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. So it was 2 years ago that something of similar nature, it was called a trust ordinance, came before the city council. It was February 18th of 2017. And I've always prided myself on being consistent. And the way that this was presented, Councilor Kennedy mentioned, there was unanimous support to oppose this trust ordinance. So this was before us. It was a similar sanctuary city issue, and we all opposed it. Many of us were still here. We had a couple of new members, so if you want to change your mind, okay. But there was unanimous support against a trust ordinance seeking to do exactly what this legislation has proposed. And at the time, we had reassurance from the police chief. We went to community meetings that the police were not asking immigration status. They will not ask, and we made it crystal clear that's not what we are about. That's not what we want. We are all in the neighborhoods, and I, like my colleagues, are involved with the communities, and that's not what I'm about. But there is an element, and it is true, and it is real, and it's something that we face that I don't want to be a part of, and that is harboring criminals in this city. So I know the hecklers can say what they want. I listened to them for quite some time. It's a reality, it's true, and it happens. And I don't think that we need any more of that in the city. And that's why I voted 2 years ago against the trust ordinance. I don't believe that we should be a sanctuary city. I think we do, and we have trust with our communities, all communities, and it has worked very well. So, thank you.
All set? Anybody? Councilor Leahy?
I just want to add one more thing. I just think that these issues, you know, it's not about immigrants coming over here. It's not about welcoming them into the city, but it turns into a fear of criminals. We shouldn't be afraid of welcoming anybody into the city that's going to be a criminal. And we all don't want criminals. If you're a bad person, you should go to jail, you should get deported, you should not be in the city. That's not what these issues are about. And I think it gets very confusing, and the issue gets diluted, and it just makes us turn on each other. It's just nonsense. This isn't about illegal people who are criminals. It's not about illegal people. It's about people who just want to come to America. And it's just, I can't believe that we're arguing about this because we don't want crime. Of course we don't want crime. But we want to welcome people here. My grandparents came over from Ireland. I mean, it's just very confusing.
Okay. You all set, Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, if I could, I just wanted to make a correction. It was, what I said in my remarks was that the vote was unanimous for the school committee to prevent ICE agents from coming into the schools. I did not speak about when trust came up or that there was a vote. My recollection is that because of comments and assurances that the police chief at that time made, that the city council took no action on the trust ordinance. That's what ended up happening. So to suggest that people that don't support this tonight flip-flopping is not correct, and that's revisionist history that I just can't allow that to go. So,
if you'll allow me, I'm not going to vote for this motion. The issue is, when you talk about a sanctuary state, I'm not aware of any bill to make this a sanctuary state, the term sanctuary. Fear of losing federal funds, that's not an issue. We're not going to lose federal funds. We have community policing. Our previous chief of police spoke about it. What he did speak about, if someone commits a heinous crime, they're going away. Simple as that. But the thing is, we're not going to use our police to break down the doors of somebody to ask them if they're legal or not legal. That's not our issue. That's not our concern. But I've mentioned this before. This is not an issue that's new today. 40-something years ago, I was head of adult education, and as I said, we had a program for second language learners. And I invited Michael and Sarah, who was head of the citizenship group, to come before the group to speak. I felt I was doing something good because there was 225 people taking second language courses. The night that he came, only something like 18 people showed up. 16 or 18 people showed up. And he said, I'm not surprised. I was shocked. I was embarrassed. I said, here I invite this man to speak on citizenship. He said, because people then were afraid of their vote, their citizen, their right for citizenship, their green card might not have been up to date. This is not a new problem. But we don't attack a problem by attacking people. What we have to do is try to solve the problem. But this is not a new problem. This has been with us a long time. I also, as headmaster of the high school, had to be concerned with the number of my top students who were county medalists, who were illegal aliens. What was I to do to them? To say, you don't belong here? This was the best and the brightest. And they had a place at the high school. They deserved some form of protection.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On February 7th of 2017, I won't mention the person's name, but she was one of the litigants on that list to change the voting. I'm not mentioning any name. She came before the council, requested permission to address us in regards to a petition to consider adopting a trust ordinance. And at that time, Councilor Milanazzo said that the Lowell Police Department is in compliance with the trust ordinance, so he commented he would not support the ordinance as it would lead to division. So I just, for the record, wanted to say that because I got the minutes of the meeting when that person spoke.
Roll call, please.
Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milanazzo.
No.
Council Newman.
No.
Mayor Samaras.
No.
Council Cirillo. Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
No.
Council Leahy.
No.
5 noes.
All right, we go back to communication from the city manager. The first is motion responses, census workshop. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Madam Manager. This is a swift response by the managers and the Honorable Congresswoman Trohan. Tomorrow, actually, there's a workshop, so I want to leave it up to Madam Managers to make that announcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Noon, and through you to the, Mr. Mayor, to the council and to the audience. Councilor Noon does note that tomorrow there is a workshop that you, Mr. Mayor, as well as Congresswoman Trahan will be conducting having to do with the census at the Inn and Conference Center tomorrow in downtown Lowell from 5:30 to 6:30. This is to deal with the Census 2020, and it's a town hall where people can come and speak. There's a report in addition to tomorrow, and I'd like to say we can take credit for working so swiftly, Counselor, but it's just the work was already in progress. And Christine McCall, as well as Elliot Veloso, have been working on this. And in addition to the workshop tomorrow, there are other dates listed as far as what has been happening and what will be happening. So with your permission, I turn it over to both Christine and Elliot to summarize what's going on with the 2020 census.
Sure. Christine McCall, Senior Planner in DPD. Back in April, we hosted sort of a kickoff event where we invited local nonprofits, community leaders, business leaders. We actually had federal partners from the Census Bureau in attendance, and also the Massachusetts Secretary of State's office, who is sort of our state liaison with the federal census. And we did roundtable discussions where we got a lot of feedback of some of the challenges that we may face in getting an accurate count on April 1st, 2020. And then again, in end of July, we had another brainstorming session. It's a much smaller group about what we wanted our complete count committee to look like, what we wanted that makeup to be. We got a lot of great feedback, and so over the next month, we're going to launch a census website on the city's website. You'll access it on the homepage. We actually have an email address, census@lowellma.gov, where people can ask questions, have any ideas of how we can do a public outreach and education. And then from now until the end of the year, we'll really be ramping up education and outreach about how you can respond to the census questions that they'll ask. And then we're actually hoping the creation of the CCC will actually help us come up with more how to reach our hard-to-count communities and actually create some Census Day events to incentivize people to respond to the census.
Questions?
Does anyone have
Any questions?
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you. Just as stated, it is so important that we get everybody counted all across the state, but certainly here in the city of Lowell. And so outreach is going on, and we will continue to work diligently with our partners to make sure people are counted and they feel comfortable being counted and assured in that process. Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have Film Festival. This was Councilor Cirillo's. Is there anything you should add, Madam Manager?
No, Councilor Cirillo's motion did ask for an update. We have one that has been prepared by Mr. Marchand, illustrating the efforts that he has undertaken to embark upon a film festival. As you can see from his report, he's contacted the Image Theater Cool, who are very enthusiastic about developing a local Lowell film collaborative, ultimately they would like to bring a national festival. For the first year, they're talking about working locally with local festival and establish a foundation for yearly growth. So in essence, they're shooting for to have a quality festival in the fall and winter season of 2020 and 2021. So it would be next fall and then into the following winter. And the group that has come together to discuss this is very enthused about conducting and working on a film festival.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no objection, just as a matter of courtesy, could we just put this off to the next agenda and take it up under old business at that time? I'm sure the Councilor Cirillo probably
We'll
want to
keep it on the
speak
agenda for Councilor Cirillo.
Okay. Next is fire damaged properties at Arthur and Shaw Street. Councilor Leahy?
I'm all set, thanks.
All set.
All set.
Next, we have a large properties coming off tax rolls. Madam Manager?
Thank you. This, I believe, is Councilor Mercier's motion, and the Law Department has prepared a report. This is in connection with large projects of 50 or more units, and the report outlines the process and what the council could do in connection under the Lowell zoning ordinance, it would pertain to large projects, which was the subject matter of the motion.
Councilor Mercia, do you have any questions on that?
I don't know which one that is.
This is the large properties coming off the tax rolls.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm concerned about properties that, there's a few properties in the city that we're concerned about in neighborhoods. It brings the value of different neighborhoods down like that, and as well as the 20 Favor Street. I don't know what the interest is there. I took it off that list, but maybe we could try to address it again because it's falling into disrepair.
So the report talks about the process if the council wants to put in protections for 50 or more units as far as.
Oh, I see what you mean, yes.
That
okay,
particular.
that one there, yes.
And lays out what the process would
That's
be
right.
on new projects as they come forward.
Sure, that's.
If that was the desire of the
that's
council.
right.
We will, the Favor Street property is problematic. It continues
is,
to be
yes.
a real issue, and we'll be bringing back recommendation to the council as to how to proceed with that property. It is city-owned property. We did take it off the tax roll, but we've been meeting on this regularly because of the conditions.
In accordance with this particular motion, there was a piece of property on Gorham Street. It abutted two schools like the Butler and the
Shaughnessy?
Shaughnessy, the
Yeah.
two schools, thank you for, and so a person bought it, but there's a legal issue as to the trees around it. He wants to be able to plant shrubbery all around it and beautify it, but he don't know if he has permission to do it because he doesn't own much of around it. And he wants to trim the trees and do a lot of beautification to make the property look good. But he said every time he called City Hall, no one's ever gotten back to him. And,
We'll
I
get
don't like
his
to,
information.
And I don't like to hear that when someone tells me
This
that.
is news to me, but we'll get his
Okay.
information from you,
All right.
Counselor, so
Thank
that
you
we
so
can
much.
contact him and find out
All
what his
right.
issue is.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have the voter rights case update, fees and potential modification to consent decree. Whose motion was this?
These were two motions, and the Law Department prepared a response, one having to do with the fees being sought, attorney's fees. I'd ask the solicitor to address steps that were taken in connection with both motions.
Sure. So with respect to the fees, we had requested a breakdown, a detailed breakdown of the attorney's fees in the matter originally. And for various reasons, primarily, can you not hear me?
Yeah, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Is that better?
Try it again.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
So just to repeat, we had from the outset attempted to acquire the attorney's fees breakdown in this matter for various reasons, but primarily because of time and cost to the plaintiff's counsel to produce the fees, estimated to be about $80,000 to go through the fees and do redactions. There was reluctance to do that. Following this motion, I'd had a couple of conversations with plaintiff's counsel at length regarding this issue. And what I've included in your packet was the final response, their position on this, which was that they declined to produce the breakdown, but they do note, as they had represented in court and I had represented in executive session, that in this matter, fees were in excess for the plaintiff's counsel of $2 million, and through negotiation, we got it down to, in the $200,000 range, $87,000, I think, was for costs. So the actual fee portion was quite limited for the case.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the city solicitor. As my colleagues and you certainly have known that in an executive session, I asked a number of times about the timesheets. Is that unusual that a law firm would not supply the timesheets? And I understand, the terminology that's used with its redaction with privilege. We understand that. But why wouldn't they come up with the timesheets, number one? Number two, I find it hard to believe that one day they wake up and it's 2.3 or 2.4 million in that vicinity?
Just something in excess of $2 million.
Excess of $2 million. And out of the goodness of their heart, they go down to, a law firm goes down to, how much money was it? 300?
It was 230,000, something like that.
Sorry?
About 280?
280,000.
I find that kind of odd, and the issue that I had with it was the fact that they wanted us to sign that decree, and yet we never saw, should we say, the bills. Now, in the real world, would that happen? I mean, would you, if you had somebody that was doing work at your house and just say, sign this and don't worry about the money later, we'll figure it out? Of course you wouldn't. You go get someone else. So I just find it very odd that they would not have supplied those timesheets. Now, the question I have, you obviously have a lot of experience with law firms. Is that unusual that a law firm would not supply the timesheets in some type of a lawsuit?
Not in a settlement of a lawsuit. And
So you're saying it's a normal process that they would not show them, is that correct?
Right. My position would be that it is not unusual that when a case settles, that there is not an actual
When it settles,
submission.
but how about prior to the settling?
As part of a settlement, prior to, leading up to, and the actual settlement, that that there would not necessarily be a breakdown of timesheets or a production of timesheets given as part of the settlement.
Yeah, see, I think, and I'm not going I just want to make one more comment on this, Mr. Mayor. I think that's where I had a problem with that signing the decree, because of the fact we didn't see anything. We didn't see the bill. Simple as that. We didn't really know how much it was going to cost to redistrict. We had no idea how much it was going to cost to get the new equipment, but yet we were going to sign that decree and give X amount of dollars to a law firm, and I'm talking about we're talking about taxpayers' money. That's where I just couldn't quite. I just couldn't quite do that, because it didn't really make a lot of sense to me, to be quite frank with you. So no sense in beating a dead horse, because obviously it's not going to change. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All set? Okay. Next week, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. There was a second part of the motion, but I think unless there's any questions on it, we can leave it as is.
Next, we have 74 White Street, Bullards. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the report, and it's very informative. I know that what the explanation was in the configuration of that curb, bollards probably would be such a hazard, perhaps, because it is treacherous. I don't know why we couldn't put a guardrail, but that's okay. We'll try the signage, because that looks like it might be something that we could do. I was going to ask when would that time frame be, but it says that the LPD sign department can order and install the signs within 2 weeks, because I'd rather do something as soon as possible rather than have the people think we didn't do anything. Although the report you gave me, I did talk to the man, and he said this is better than nothing at all, so we'll see if that might work.
Sure. It's my understanding the sign department has the chevron signs, and I believe they can make the curve sign, so it should be as soon as they can get to it. And to your question about the guardrail, guardrail functions best from it's designed to deflect lateral strikes and not head-on strikes. So if we put guardrail in front, the configuration of the curve, cars are driving kind of straight into the house, so the guardrail is not effective in that particular scenario.
Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you know Andover Street, and if one side, the left side of Andover Street and the right side of Andover Street, those two streets come together like this, if it didn't have a stop sign at night, you would swear you could go right across the street to the next part of it. So that in itself, that sign is important. This might just work, so.
There is a lot of evidence that indicates that the high visibility yellow signs have an impact on driver behavior.
Okay.
And, as long as the driver's not distracted, they certainly should be aware that there's a curve and slow down appropriately.
Yeah, that'd be good. So as soon as we can get it, the better for me.
Okay.
I'm trying to beat bad weather, you know what I'm saying?
I will follow up with the sign department tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next motion response is Andover Street. We had Councilor Mercia, Councilor Conway, and Councilor Elliott. Anyone wish to speak on this? Councilor Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the report, and I'm wondering whether I just talked to Natasha, if she could come up, because it's a little complicated, if she could explain the difference here between the short-term recommendations and the long-term recommendations, and as you can see, there's a number of city councilors that have put this motion on, and I think that my colleagues here that have been sitting here for a number of years, I'm sure discussed that street numerous times because of the high traffic, the speeding, accidents, and so forth. So I think that the council as a whole certainly has tried to do something with that street to make it safer for the people, and hopefully we can come up with something going forward that will satisfy that. So, Natasha?
Sure. So I'll just go over the short-term recommendations for the folks at home. And Christine Clancy, the city engineer, is also here to address some of the recommendations. So one of the things we did repaint the yellow dashed and solid lines marking the center lane. We held off on marking the solid white lanes in the thought of perhaps striping a narrower lane, or potentially one of the suggestions for traffic calming, which can produce slower speeds, was the potentially a bike lane with striped with flex posts. There is a drawback to that in that it would change the appearance of Andover Street.
Bike lane where?
It would be, so you would have the center lane, the drive lane, and then there would be a striped section with flex posts to set. There already is a bike lane on, and it would just
I'll be honest
separate
with you, I haven't seen anybody drive bikes on Andover Street. It would be kind of dangerous.
Well, yeah, in general, people prefer to ride bikes on separated bike facilities. Yes, and it's not a particularly safe place given the speed. However, there is, and then another complication is that because Andover Street is concrete, in order to put in flex posts, we'd have to bore holes, and that could potentially damage the road and create a maintenance issue. So, so the yellow, the center lines were repainted, the crosswalks have been repainted, and lastly, we need to add the solid white line and consider making the lane 11 feet wide instead of 13 feet wide. There's some evidence to show striping a narrower lane will slow people down because they feel more constricted. It's not likely to work on Andover Street given how wide the street is, but that's a possibility.
I will, if you don't mind for a second, I will say that they're using that middle lane to pass.
Which is not what,
Passing,
yeah,
I
that's,
know.
yeah.
So if there's some way that we can, let people know that lane is not for that.
Sure, that lane is intended for turning vehicles. Yeah, so if they're coming out of a side street or waiting to turn onto a side street, that's the intention of the, that's actually why there's a dash and a solid line, is to indicate you're not supposed to use it for a drive lane. So if anybody's listening, please don't use that as a drive lane. Another suggestion was to conduct a speed study to confirm what the current posting. I've had a number of questions from counselors about what speed should be on Andover Street. There is one speed limit sign posted, which is 35 miles an hour. A speed study is because it's a state road, we have to perform a speed study and look at the 85th percentile speed, and that should be the posted speed. A speed study hasn't been done for a number of years, so that's a possibility. And then lastly, repaint the crosswalks. Sorry, I already talked about that. Coordinating with LPD to continue to enforce the speed limit. Deputy Superintendent Gollner informed me this morning that they used a grant to get a digital battery-operated speed sign that will detect the vehicle speed and flash their speed at them. It will be installed just before the crosswalk at Douglas Road. That could potentially have an impact on drivers' behavior, because a lot of times when...
Yeah, I saw something, and I can't remember where it was, but it actually said, when you were approaching, it said, you are speeding.
Yeah.
You go, and I immediately slowed right down there because I was going over
Yeah.
like 2 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it works, something like that, because it gets your attention.
Yeah, I don't know the exact type. He just mentioned it to me this morning. Some of them actually flash like red if you're going above the speed limit. But yeah, so
Is that
that's
something, do we have those, that pieces of equipment? Or
so
do we-
they're like $5,000. So they got a grant to get one of them. I don't know if there'll be one in both directions, but I'll confirm with him. And then I'm gonna let Christine talk about some of the other options.
Sure. Some of the other short-term options is we do have the $200,000 in this fiscal capital plan, really for sidewalk improvements along Andover Street, but also looking at traffic calming. $200,000, we can't fix the whole corridor, but it's just a start, and that's where we can look at a traffic calming study along the corridor, and also a signalized intersection at Clark and the intersection of Andover Street and Clark and Raven. And that's something I think that just needs to be studied further to see if that is a potential opportunity. And that could potentially come out of these $200,000 funds. The intent of that was to have some of it allocated, about half of it for sidewalk improvements, and then potentially the rest for traffic calming. And so that's something that Natasha and I are working on right now, at least for the pedestrian improvements, having that go out in the short term, but also seeing how we can have that study be part of the short-term option. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Also, as far as, I think Natasha already mentioned, there were some examples in the packet about use of flex posts, and that is being used in other parts, other towns or cities in the state. But that is an option, but because of it is a concrete roadway, so every core into the roadway does potentially degrade the concrete surface, and that does require maintenance, inexpensive maintenance every several years. So it's something that is an option, and it could be a short-term option, but I don't know if it's particularly appropriate for this corridor. And then, so beyond short-term, then we have long-term options, and that's where there's information in this motion response to say long-term, that is, this corridor, it is potentially an expensive project. And Connor can speak about it, but that's where we have to look for more opportunities for whether it be capital, grant opportunities, Mass DOT, getting on the complete streets list. But it's a big project, and really for a whole road diet or an entire corridor improvement, that's a big project that we have to plan for.
Yeah, I think, again, the short term, whatever can be done to make things safer and slow things down, I think everyone would really appreciate it. And I thank you, ladies, for your work on this. Appreciate it.
Councilor Mercia, then Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Natasha. Do you know how many speed limit signs are on Andover Street?
I believe there's only one. I think it's yeah.
I know there's only one.
Oh, okay.
But here's my motion. Request the city manager have the proper department install additional speed limit signs on Andover Street. Is that so difficult that we can't do that? Or we need a study to figure if we can get more?
Exactly. So installation of the signs is obviously not difficult. But if we were to install them right now, the last speed study indicated an 85th percentile speed of 43 miles an hour. So that would mean posting a speed of either 40 or 45, which is likely not what residents are looking for, or the speed that we would want to not
So
encourage.
if I get stopped from the police and he says, you're going 40 miles an hour, this says 35 miles an hour, you're going 40, I could fight that technically because we don't know what's going on here.
It's my understanding that the police do not enforce it's my understanding that you would not be pulled over if you were going 40 miles an hour. I don't know.
Yes, you will, because I see them stopping people all the time. David, tell me, are we stopping people? Because I see them.
Why would, if they're breaking the law, why wouldn't they
Well,
be stopped?
they're not breaking the law because there's an ordinance on the books that says the speed limit on Andover Street is 40 miles an hour. That's my understanding. I'm not a
But the
police
sign
officer.
says 35 miles an hour.
Okay, I don't think in doing research for this motion, there was a email from, and again, the speed study was done 10 years ago, that is not a legally enforceable speed limit, and that the ordinance, the 35 mile an hour ordinance, is not legally enforceable either because it's not supported by the speed study, the
So
results of the speed study.
we don't know what the actual speed limit is, so B, we can't put a sign up. And people are asking for more signage because if you see it at the beginning and you missed it, then you could see it down the certain area of the street and say, oh my God, I'm going over the speed limit. But we can't do that because we need a study for it.
Correct.
Oh, my
You know,
goodness.
there have been requests for 25 miles an hour. I know Council Leahy's made one, I've made it.
Yeah, so on a state road like this, the number that we desire is not the number that can be posted. There has to be a speed study, and it's the 85th percentile speed that is determined. So in essence, if people are speeding, if you currently feel like people are speeding on Andover Street and we do a speed study, it may indicate that we have to post an even higher speed limit. That's where that's a little bit of a conundrum.
But we're looking, there are many places in Andover, I mean, all the places where, say, 133 goes, Raleigh, and things like that, where it's 40 miles an hour, then it drops to 25 miles an hour.
Sure.
And because of homes in Andover Street, it's certainly a residential area. Councilor Elliott?
Can I make a motion to send this issue to the Transportation Subcommittee? I think it warrants a larger discussion than at 20 of 10 at night.
Second by Mr. Conway.
And I can do a little more research into what's possible, but that's my understanding. So.
Yeah, one of the things we know is we don't want higher speed limit signs posted on Andover Street, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
So why don't we put up 35 mile an hour signs and have people go, at least if they're going 40, they're still within their rights. So I don't know how hard it is to get signs up.
I'm just saying I don't.
And I'm not blaming you, Natasha, I know you're following the
It's going to a
rules.
subcommittee, why don't we just?
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, next, from the city manager, information, citywide construction projects update.
Thank you. So we had reported would give a quarterly update on all of the construction projects. It's a lengthy report. Again, given the hour, I don't know if there are any specific questions. Let me just say for people at home, this is on our website, so that people can go and find out about these construction projects. Certainly was in the packet. I don't know that you want to let people know where they can find the regular update on all of these projects. As I said, there are so many of them.
Sure.
We'll be here till 10 o'clock tomorrow night if we start going through every one, but.
Sure, if people go to lowellma.gov and then click on the constructions button, they're right at the top of the page, the last two that we've done, and I can post this one tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and so there are several, and people may want to know about all or a particular one, and so they can certainly access that on our website.
Councilor Milner?
Just to make a comment, the bridge over, I believe it's the Merrimack Canal by Cobblestones, has a completion date of 2022, which you've already talked about at a subsequent meeting. But I was on that bridge today, and there's 5 stress cracks. in the sidewalk. I couldn't believe it. I sound like John Leahy, and but it's true. I mean, if you see something, it's a concern. There's 5 stress cracks on that sidewalk. So again, I just bring it to your attention.
So we can call the contractor back.
We are aware of this, and so this bridge, even though it looks like it has been completed, it still has a completion date, because that is still part of this project that goes to 2022. So those cracks are on our punch list, and that a lot of cracking typically happens, if there is cracking in sidewalks, happens over winter. So we said, I don't want them to replace it right now, wait till the winter, and then we'll make a decision. But that is on our punch list, and so the city has not approved that yet.
It was interesting because the cracks were not where the borders were, if you will. They were right down the middle of each block, at least 5 or 6 blocks.
Yes, it's on our punch list. Thank you.
Thank you. You're all set. All right, I need a motion to accept the placement file.
So moved.
Garcia, and second by Councilor Noon. Next, we have, we're now down to 7.2, vote to accept by donation easements and furtherance of law.
6.3. 6.3.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped 6.3, communication. City manager requests out-of-state travel for 2 members of the Lowell Police Department, and also one for Department of Planning and Development. Need a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Conway. Roll call?
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Council Cirillo. Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Mr.
Now we're
Mayor.
down to 7.2, vote to accept.
Mr. Mayor, do we have
Yes.
could the clerk tell us, do we have a bundling opportunity here between 7.2 and 7.5? It's about 9:45.
I feel there's always an opportunity to bundle, Counselor, and this may be one of them.
If there's no objection, I would move that we bundle 7.2
Second.
through 7.5.
So,
Can you do that in 7.4?
roll call?
I don't think so.
Roll call?
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Council Cirillo. Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Elliott. Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Next, we have orders of 60-day trial. I waive the full reading, second reading by title. Pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations, are hereby implemented for a period up to 60 days. Need a motion to adopt?
So moved.
By Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Conway. Roll call.
Is it, Mr. Mayor, is this a 60-day trial?
Yes.
Okay, could I just make a comment about Victor Street? Could I just say what it says here, because someone out in the audience will be happy to hear that Victor Street, create residential parking area to restrict parking to residents only per resident request, part of the solution for circulation at the Greenhouse School per LPS request. I think that's what you'd like, right? There, beautiful, thank you so much.
Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Council Cirillo. Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
8 yeas.
All right, next we have order vacate, discontinue, and abandon portion of Eaton Street. I need a motion to refer to a public hearing on September 10th.
So moved.
Second.
By 2019 at 7 p.m. By Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Conway. Next, we have order to vacate, discontinue, and abandon portion of Montreal Street. I need a motion to refer to a public hearing on September 10th,
So moved.
2019 by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Noon. Reports of Subcommittee, Park and Recreation Subcommittee.
Yes.
Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
The Parks and Recreation Subcommittee met last Monday, August 19th at 5:30 with Councilor Dave Conway and Councilor John Leahy in attendance, along with Danny Capone, President of Callery Park Little League, and Caitlin Corcoran Hickey, the youth coordinator from the City of Lowell Recreation Department, and Chris Snow, president and commissioner of Shed Park. Discussion centered on a motion I made on behalf of Danny Capone to continue or resume what the city once did for the end of the year final playoff games with the tournaments each July. The city used to buy a bronze banner plaque with all the children's names of the winning team, and this plaque got mounted on the concession stands. This year, the Highlands Park won, but this got dropped. Then the city used to buy the Mayor's Cup trophy, and it was displayed as well by the winning team. That got dropped. Each team paid for their own, and each league took it on themselves. There are 5 major Little League teams in the city that compete in this playoff tournament. Callery Park President Danny Capone, PYO Joe Shabut, President Shed Park Chris Snow, Highlands Ryan Rourke, President, Centerville Bob Belanger, President. The city, with a $400 million budget, dropped the ball on these Little League teams. What was once paid for by the city is now gone. These are the scenarios that shape our kids, make them competitive, teach them if you cooperate, you can win. It teaches them teamwork. It teaches them not everyone can win, but you did your best. And the city walked away, and I'm saying this, I'm sad because the city walked away from this spirit of recreation, walked away from the spirit of physical activity. These playoff tournaments are a great opportunity to meet other kids from different neighborhoods who are the same age as each other, that you remember them when you go to high school. Oh, I remember that kid on the Little League. We played together. We played against each other. He's a great kid. This is a community value event generated through sports that creates long-lasting friendships with kids from other neighborhoods. Now, league coaches, parents, and presidents of each league gave of themselves, and I don't know why we can't give to them as well. They gave for free, they gave their time, and yet we as a city, with that much of a budget, we can't, in all goodness, help pay for the final league playoff. It offers, that we offer that's played every year. So Councilor Conway, seconded by Councilor Leahy, and I'm going to say what we discussed, what we made our motion about, because I think I'm going to have to amend it. It was recommended by a motion to the full city council to fund no more than $3,000, but I have to amend that because I have to make it $3,500 because we got a breakdown on our desk earlier to the cost of what it would be for that 2-week playoff, and it's no more than $3,500, I would say. I know there's $67, but if I have to pay that, I don't mind that. To fund no more than $3,500 for the end of the year City Commissioners Baseball Championship. That's what they call it, City Commissioners Baseball Championship playoff games. That was passed on a roll call, 3 yeas. That would include the Mayor's Championship Cup trophy, the bronze plaque with all of the children's names on it, and the cost of the umpire. And when I say that, let me just say this, because this was discussed too. It seems like there's a person called an assigner, and the assigner chooses the umpire. And this assigner seems to not do competitive shopping like we would to see what the best price we could get. So they get, this assigner gets a person, meaning an umpire, and the umpires, some are asking for $90. Now that's a lot. When Danny Capone can choose and get umpires for $55 is what he said, and I'd like a reasonable rate. So if we could work somehow and get an assigner that would choose an umpire, that wouldn't be an alarming cost, because Connor, you know we like to save money here the best we can and shop around for a good price. I mean, an umpire is an umpire, so that's what we're trying to do. So we made that motion, Madam Manager, if we could try to resume this.
Yeah, we'll certainly look into it. If you can give us the contact. We don't have any record of when this had happened.
You wouldn't have known that. You
Right.
wouldn't have known that.
So if we can find out what the program.
And I
who
didn't know it either, but because your understanding, I think this is something we
So, yeah,
could
we can-
probably do.
Whoever, we'll contact you.
All
and
right,
we'll
that's
research
fine.
it.
Thank you
as far
so much.
as what the process
I know
was.
that Peter Faticanti did not attend the meeting. He was on vacation, and I said, go ahead on your vacation, but he knows all how to reach all these people.
Okay, we'll follow up with
Thank
Peter.
you so much. Thank you. If I could have a roll call on this particular motion that the three of us unanimously supported at our subcommittee, I'll say it over again for the sake of trying to have you. To recommend to the full council to fund no more than $3,500 for the end of the year, which is the City Commissioners Baseball Championship Playoff Games. And that's the motion, and supported unanimously, 3 yays on the. Can we have a roll call on that for the full
I need a
council?
motion to accept the report and the
Okay.
requests. Moved by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Noon. Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Council Cirillo. Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy. Yes. Council Leahy. 8 yeas.
Thank you very much. Thank
Good.
you.
All right, we've got 10 minutes. Next is Transportation Subcommittee of August 26th. Councilor Elliott?
I will opt to give this report a little bit later. We talked about 3 things: the Central Street Bridge, the market basket traffic pattern, and proposed regulations for traffic calming measures. So I think it's better that, and it's only in draft form and it will come back, so I'll delay the rest of the report until next meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Environmental Flood Issues Subcommittee of August 27th.
That subcommittee
Cirillo.
that was canceled by
Yes, that was
by the
canceled.
chairperson, and so
Yes,
I'm sure it'll be
we're all set.
rescheduled when possible.
All right, next we have Wire Inspector Sienna Engineering requests installation of underground telecommunication conduit on Andover Street from Dancross Road to Tewksbury Line. Need a motion to accept and adopt accompanying order by Councilor Conway, second by Councilor Noon. Then we have petitions, claim property damage, motion to refer to Law Department for report and recommendation.
So move.
Motion by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Milonazo. Next, we have Paco Rodriguez requests installation of a 15-minute parking only sign in front of 97 Salem Street. Motion to refer to the transportation engineer for a report.
So moved.
Recommendation by Councilor
Second.
Kennedy, second by Councilor Noon.
Good.
Next, we have miscellaneous. Michael Weatherby, on behalf of Diane Jaquez, requests installation of handicap parking sign at 495-51 Pleasant Street. I need a motion to refer to the transportation
So
engineer.
moved.
By Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Conway. Next, by Thomas McAdanis, requests residential-only parking for Jordan Street. Motion to refer to transportation
So moved.
engineer. Councilor
Second.
Kennedy, second by Councilor Noon. Now, council motion, first by Councilor Conway, requests city manager provide a report regarding the repainting of crosswalk lines that are
Second.
closed in proximity to our schools. Second by Councilor Noon, Councilor
Thank you.
Conway.
Just very quickly, it's my understanding that the crosswalks lines are painted district-wide.
Yes.
Yeah, or in different sections of the city, and I think it might be a good idea. I've had people say to me around the schools, crosswalks are almost non-existent, so if we could take a look at that, appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we'll get your report. Deputy Goldner did report to me this afternoon that they've been working nights this week around the schools, and they are completing the crosswalks near the schools
Good.
because it is a priority.
Yeah.
So, but we'll get you that report.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we delay action on 11.2.
Councilor Cirillo's
until the next
motion,
time.
correct. Thank you. Next, by Councilor Noon, request city manager work with Board of Parks to create a standard policy by which permits are granted and fees assessed for various festivals and activities in the city and consider giving multiple-year permits to organizations that sponsor annual events. Second by Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, because of our great diversity, there's so many festivity in the city of Lowell, namely the big folk festival that we had last month. That was the 33rd annual thing, and you have the second to it was the Lowell Southeast Asian Water Festival, the 23rd year now. Then you have the other like Irish Festival and so on and so forth. So every year the same group will come before the border park for permit. I think we ought to have a, you know, maybe a multi-year round permit for them. Because they are part of our community and they bring, you know, people together, and they also bring, you know, part of economic development, I mean, to the city, because people go to restaurants and club and whatnot afterward, and that's just one component of it. The other component of it, because the border park play an instrumental role in the city of Lowell, the board and commission, you know, to have them stuck somewhere at DPD, it's just not good. We should invite them. We should make space for them, just like we did for the planning board, the zoning board, the liquor license, and so on and so forth. Invite them to come here so that, you know, they have a space and people can see the contribution that they give to the city of Lowell. You know, so I would do that in two forms. That, and also invite them to have their meeting here instead of stuck somewhere and behind, you know, DPD closet, so to speak. A living room is so small. I think, you know, we need to honor their work. So that's all I want to say on that. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have by Councilor Noon. Request city manager have proper department talk to City of Newton about their recent launch of on-demand subsidized ride service for seniors and consider a similar service for Lowell.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy.
I don't know much about this, so that's why I'm asking the managers to have maybe the senior center to look into it, to help our elders and those who in need to get some discounts and whatnot. So maybe we have other program already in City of Lowell that do that. So that just, you know, just explorations, another word. Thank you.
Okay. We took care of the signature bridge. If you don't mind, from the podium, request by myself, request city manager have Department of Planning Development and Inspectional Services develop policy and ordinance to encourage temporary pop-up shops as an option to fill underutilized or vacant storefronts.
Second.
By Councilor Noon. That speaks for itself. Finally, the last motion is by myself, request city manager have proper department review security procedures for Lowell City Hall.
Second.
Second by Councilor Noon. On this
Mr. Mayor,
here,
on that motion, if you don't mind, can we add the library and the JFK Civic?
you know what, thank you for that. I mean, the reason for this is, you know, all over the country, when we watch the news at night, unfortunately, we see people at work, whether they're in a factory, a store, at school, at a movie, they get hurt, they can get hurt. And I know here at City Hall, there have been people who've come into City Hall, into various offices, and have been very threatening to people in the office. And there's just nowhere to go at that particular time. You know, you're under, you might be alone in an office, and someone of a threatening nature is in your office, and now how do you call the police? What do you do? So I'd like to have the manager and her staff review safety procedures, as you stated, and include not only the City Hall, but the library, and other, actually, city venues.
Mr. Mayor, in view of the fact of what went on at Lowell High School, where a person was able to get in to the Lowell High School, could we have some sort of a plan whereby just some stranger doesn't walk right in, where construction is being done and a door is left open and...
There'll be a complete report on that.
Okay, thank you.
That's in process right now, as we speak. I need a motion to, any announcements? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Right on the dime.